The Blast from Our Past Network.
Hey everybody, co-host Corey here. As I'm sure you're aware, there are multiple fires burning through Los Angeles right now. Unfortunately, our friends Dustin from $2 Late Fee and his wife Erin, and Max from Ready to Retro and his wife Jasmine, they lost their entire homes in the Altadena fire. 2 GoFundMe campaigns have been set up, one for each family, and I've put the links in the show notes below. If you have, any inclination or the means, please consider donating to both of those GoFundMe accounts. I mean, I can't even imagine what they're going through right now, literally losing everything in the fires. And it's heartbreaking. And I mean, it's crazy in Los Angeles right now. So like I said, if you have the ability or the means, please consider contributing to their GoFundMe accounts to help them rebuild their lives. Thank you guys so much, and now on to the show.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode, Steel and Lace, starring Clare, Wren, Bruce Davison, and Stacy, Haiduk.
Corey, there are times when we have Patreon members, like Cam Sully, for example, who is the one responsible for tonight's movie that we're going to be breaking down in just a moment, Steel and Lace from 1990. There are times when someone chooses a movie, Crystal, and Corey goes, "Oh, I love this movie. It's so good. It's got boobs and it's got butts and it's got meh."
It's got butts.
And then Cam Sully, for example, tonight chose a movie that I may have moments where I go, because Steel and Lace is, woo baby, quite a ride. Cam Sully, who is the host of the Jacked Up Review Show podcast, chose this movie, Steel and Lace. We're going to talk about it tonight. I'm really excited about it. Clearly I am, because I just jumped in blabbing about it for the last 2 minutes. Sleazy C is here with me. Sleazy, are you a robot? That's, oh God, I don't even want to say.
Can I grow boobs like that one, the FBI agent? I actually think I am growing boobs right now, but yes.
Woo, baby. I think if Corey could grow boobs and then deflate them and deflate them, you would totally do that.
Every day, all day long, every day.
This also begs the question of what happened to Rat from Fast Times at Ridgemont High after he graduated high school? Because we're going to find out.
When we get into the cast, I have a lot to say about that, because I thought he was in a lot more stuff than he actually was.
Nope.
But yeah.
And man, who knows? Sometimes there's a reason for that. Sometimes there's not. But in this case, we'll get into all that in a moment. I'm excited to talk about Steel and Lace. Corey, so happy to be back with you, breaking down a movie. It's a wild ride. Steel and Lace. What's your connection to Steel and Lace? Vinegar syndrome.
Yeah. I bought this Blu-ray, sight unseen, from Vinegar Syndrome, I think 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yep, on one of their sales. I bought it because of the cover. And Zach, you'll be getting yours soon, and you're going to be like, holy crap, this is a beautiful cover. So I bought it sight unseen. I had seen the VHS cover at, various places, mom and pop video stores.
What sort of places?
It's remarkably, this movie's not as sleazy as you think it is. Or it doesn't have as much nudity as you think it is.
Yeah, it's sleazy, but it's
sleazy, but without a lot of gratuitous nudity. I watched it for the first time 2 years ago, and I was like, holy shit. This movie is infinitely better than it has any right to be.
Agreed.
And, and I was like, holy crap, I loved it. I enjoyed it. I think I told Zach about it. And you're like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that one before, and everything. And then, we come to it now, and I've, at this point seen it 4 times. I love it every time I watch it. And I'm like, why is this movie so good? And then you find out that like the writer is like an Emmy award-winning writer. And then like multiple members of the cast are like multi-Tony award-winning stage actors.
Oh, yeah.
And you realize that this is just like, it's one of those movies that is a perfect storm that never, it should not be this good. It never should be this good, but somehow all the gates opened up and all the lights turned green, and somehow this movie came out and it's freaking awesome. And by the way, it actually got a good review in Variety back in 1990.
Oh, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Probably one of the reasons why maybe I didn't rent it back in the day, because I was like, oh, this has a A-list cast. Well, a B-plus cast. And it doesn't, and the title suggests that it's going to be more sleazy than it actually is. And I think that's probably why I was like a teenager at the time. It's probably why I didn't rent it at the time, but caught it on Cinemax every now and then. And of course, caught one of the most famous kills in this movie as a GIF when I was looking for a birthday picture for one of the actors in the movie way back when on $2 late fee, when I used to do those now famous or infamous birthday collages, which garnered a lot of support and popularity, and a lot of copying by other podcasts, and garnered some guests for $2 late fee, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I found this GIF and I was like, this is amazing. What's this movie? What's this GIF from? What movie is this from? Realizing it's Steel and Lace, and I'm like, oh, I got to watch this in its entirety someday. And Cam Sully chose it for tonight. So thank you, Cam.
Which kill was it?
It involves a helicopter
kill? Yeah, the helicopter. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So another thing that I loved about this movie, not only is like the acting actually really damn good, but the kills are all like Mortal Kombat fatalities. Like there's not just like a simple, she like knocks someone off the roof or something. Like she's ripping heads off. She's putting holes through people. She's sucking their guts out through their dicks. It's crazy.
This is what if Savage Streets had a baby with Eve of Destruction, I think is what this would be. And even, where is Eve of Destruction, by the way? How come that's not available? Where's Kino on this? Forget Vinegar Syndrome, because look, guys, I love Vinegar Syndrome. We both love Vinegar Syndrome, but sometimes they get a little ahead of themselves, promising things that sometimes it takes them forever to ship things out. And you're like, don't give us an idea that you're going to put this stuff out right away, and then not ship it to us for the longest time, and then go to a screening and have all those said copies that you could have shipped out to your customers at said screening.
Yeah. So what Zach is alluding to is, and I know he's a little bitter about this.
Table for one.
So I ordered him a copy of this on the Black Friday Vinegar Syndrome sale, because I was like, oh, I know we're going to review it, and it was, it's like $13 on sale. I was like, sure, whatever, I'll get it for Zach.
Thank you.
And I also got like the Keep special edition for him as well, because he got the regular Keep, and then we're going to do swapsies, because I don't really care about the booklet and everything. But I actually got my order in before Black Friday, before they all sold out. And here it is, January 9th, and I still have not got my order. Now, it has been processed as of 2 days ago.
Oh, nice.
But Zach had to go to like this Russian, website to watch this movie, because it's not streaming like anywhere. So
there is a slight difference, I think, in the cuts, and as we discussed tonight in the breakdown, I'm watching the hour 29-minute cut. Corey's watching the hour 34-minute cut, or 33. And so there may be some extra stuff that Corey can elaborate on. There may be, or there may be not. Or it may be some really terrible dialogue that means absolutely nothing. We'll find out.
And I scrubbed through the link that Zach had, and it looked like all of like the kills were intact and everything. So I truly don't know where the 3 minutes getting cut are from. No idea. Then again, granted, bro, on the Blu-ray, like the movie ends at like an hour and 29 minutes. It has like 3 or 4 minutes of like, credits at the end. So maybe they just trimmed the credits of yours or something.
Maybe they did. Like Corey said, you can't find this anywhere. I went on typically you could find it on YouTube or Tubi with a lot of these movies that we break down. This one is very hard to come by. Yeah, I found some random web when I was doing a search online, and I typed in the name and the year the movie came out, and some Russian site came up, and I'm like, should I click on this? I did. And I didn't get texted by a bunch of bots soon after. It was all good.
I was waiting for your phone to collapse or something like that. Now, I did so when I was scrubbing through the link that you sent. It's interesting because that is the widescreen. So the Blu-ray is going to have both the widescreen version, but that's not the original version, is the TV format, because this was filmed for either television or VHS. They knew this was going to go straight to VHS. So the one you saw is actually not the correct aspect ratio, but the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray that I'm sending you will have both versions on it. Now, since I had the test, I popped in the widescreen version to see if maybe the runtime was different on that one, but it was exactly the same. It was just the aspect ratio was different. So, but it is interesting because this was filmed in that TV aspect, that VHS aspect ratio, because they were fully expecting this to be just straight to video. Interesting.
Cheap plug. If you go to the latest episode of $2 Late Fee, or one of the latest episodes of $2 Late Fee, Tales from the Video Store with Corey and David Irons on the show, we discussed the widescreen controversy back in the day, and I threw in a clip from Siskel and Ebert. If you go on our YouTube, on $2 YouTube, you can check it out. It's a fun comparison where they show why we should have widescreen, but in this case, why we should have made for TV.
Yeah, was it 3:11 or something whatever that aspect ratio is.
Interesting. Well, why don't we jump into the cast of Steel and Lace and
the stellar, the B+, A- stellar cast.
Yeah, so starting at the top, the lead actress, she's Steel, she's Lace, she's Clare Wren, playing Gailey Morton. Clare Wren, oh gosh, so she's been in a lot of television, from JAG and NYPD Blue and The Division and Nash Bridges.
And Hunter,
of course. So she's a very accomplished very accomplished TV actor, and Adventures of Briscoe County.
I was going to say that one because I did a rewatch of that last year, and I remember the exact episode she's in. She's like a madam of I think a whorehouse or something, but they're kind of fighting back. You saw an episode similar in Serenity. It's very similar to that one, or I'm sorry, Firefly, the TV show Firefly had a very similar episode. But yeah, she was the head of this rebellious whorehouse or something.
Well, that kind of tracks with this character, sort of, in this, rebellious.
Yeah, it does.
Bruce Davison, I think, is probably the most well-known of all the cast members. He plays her brother, Albert. I think, younger people will know him from X-Men and 1923.
Senator Kelly.
Yep, as Senator Kelly. But he's been around forever.
Yeah, and I think he was up for an Academy Award for something too. So he's an Academy Award nominee, but he was also on Seinfeld. Remember when George had to take that job because what's her name died? His fiance died.
Oh yeah.
And he had to take the job with her family, and his name was Wick or something. So I always know him from Seinfeld and Senator Kelly from X-Men.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I never really was a big fan of his. It just was kind of boring to me, but he is a very accomplished actor.
He's one of those guys that I don't think anyone ever gets excited to see him, but at the same time, you're not going to get a bad performance out of him.
Right. Yeah, he's very accomplished, but it's kind of meh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Stacy Haiduk plays Allison. And she's been around for a long time, and she's working all the time. She's on SWAT, Days of Our Lives, but she's been around. She does a lot of voiceover, Star Wars: Old Republic. And she's a very well-known actor.
And I think I recognize her in the back of my head from Sequest DSV. She wasn't on every episode, but she was a fairly regular ensign or a lieutenant or whatever. But I think I remember her from that. By the way, I watched the making of documentary thing, which is like new, with I think it's maybe 5 years new or whatever. And boy, oh boy, is she still stunning.
Okay. That's good to know. I wonder if this guy's still stunning. David Naughton. David, please change your IMDb photo to something a little bit more happy. Naughton?
Yeah,
because David Naughton's IMDb photo, like, he looks so angry. I know, like, he's the quintessential nice guy. And if you don't know who David Naughton is, then you're not a horror fan, because he was an American Werewolf in London.
I know he's freaking horror royalty at this point. But it is kind of funny because like we all know who he is, and he's done a lot of stuff. He's actually on an episode of Seinfeld as well. But like, I feel like he never quite got as big as like, you kind of think he's going to, or you think he should have. Yeah.
It's not kind of, it is a shame. Because I really like the dude a lot, and he just comes across as being like he's a really likable guy. He plays Detective Dunn in this. He's or Clippy for some reason, and I love the guy. He's like somebody you want to hang out with. There's a lot of other amazing actors in this film, and maybe we should get to a couple of them.
Yeah, let's do the 4 villains, and then. There's a ton of other cool actors in it, but we will talk about them as they pop up in the breakdown. But let's do the 4 main villains, starting with Michael.
I think we should call them the 5 Musketeers.
The 5 Musketeers. Touche, buddy. That was a great line, too, by the way. And I love how it came back as well. That was so good.
Or, as I like to call them, the 5 Therapists. Or, as Sean Connery from Jeopardy would say, the 5 Rapists.
So, dude, starting with 2-time Tony winner Michael Cerveris, who's from Bethesda, Maryland, by the way.
Oh, interesting. That is very interesting. So, this guy is one heck of a performer, and like these 5 therapists are amazing. Like they're all really, really good and really sleazy and convincing. One of them you have sympathy for, sort of. But he is such a great villain in this.
He is, and I mean, you see his IMDb now, and I think he's like always bald now, like that's his thing. But man, even with that poor male pattern baldness thing going on in the movie that he had, I was like, oh, he's not going to be that cool. He actually still turned out to be a cool villain.
Yeah, he's good at being bad. It's good at being bad.
He is.
Scott Burkholder plays Toby. And he's been in a ton of stuff, most notably Con Air and Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I think he's another guy that's a Broadway actor, so I think a lot of his credits are over on Broadway. But he is also a Seinfeld alumni.
Wow.
He was in the episode where George gets stuck on the plane with the serial killer, and he goes to buy the magazine at the airport, and the serial killer's like on the cover of it, and then George buys it, but the serial killer wanted to because he's got like U.S. Marshals with him, and George kind of mocks him. He's like, "I've got it, and you're going to jail." And then at the very end, he gets stuck on the plane with the guy and everything.
That's right. I remember that episode.
Right?
Was Paul Lieber in Seinfeld? He plays Oscar.
Dude, he wasn't. But low-key, he was one of my favorite actors in the whole movie.
Oh, he's great. He's great at being sleazy. And I think I know why, because he's probably the sleaziest of them all.
Yeah, he definitely looks like it. I mean, again, there's another guy that I think does a lot of Broadway stuff. But he was also an Alias for quite a bit of time as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So the last 2 are probably the most notable out of the 2. I will save my biggest one for last, and I'll skip over him for a moment and go to John J. York, who plays Craig. There's your werewolf connection yet again.
David Ullman, dude, another werewolf connection. Yep, he plays the main character, Eric Cord, in Werewolf, and man, we love that show. And it's so funny because when I watched this movie 2 years ago, I don't think I think it was right before we covered Werewolf, so I didn't know that was him in it, and he's not in it a lot. He's like the first one to go, and I'm watching the movie, and at first I'm like, why isn't John J. York the main villain? Like, he's got more of the look and everything. But as I've watched this multiple times, I actually like who they went with as the main villain.
This is one of those where I'm like, oh, I don't want him to be a villain. That's surprising, and he is.
Yeah.
And then the last guy who you don't want to see as a villain, I don't think I would ever consider him a villain in any role I've seen him in besides this movie. Brian Backer, who plays Norman, he's Rat from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And, where he forgets his wallet and Damone brings him the wallet, gives it to and then Damone steals Stacy from Rat. And the rest is history. Also from Police Academy 4. He's like the guy who's 35, but he's supposed to be a teenager skateboarding with David Spade.
Yep, and he was also in Moving Violations,
another
which
great
is a movie
one.
that, you and I both love that one. But as far as a Podcast After Dark alumni, he was in The Burning.
He was one of the final people to survive at the end.
Yeah, so Zach, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I mean, I know Brian Backer. I've seen him, in a million things. And as I'm like, watching the movie and kind of pausing it and just checking IMDb, I'm like, why the fuck does he only have 18 credits to his name? But yet, I feel like he's always been a part of my life. It's because the movies are so big that he was in, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I've seen that a million fucking times, Yeah,
the movies he's been in are repeat viewings.
I've seen Police Academy 4 a million times as a kid.
Yeah, honestly, that's my favorite of the series. And in fact, it's probably the most kid-friendly of all the Police Academy movies.
Yeah, Citizens on Patrol. I saw that in the theater.
Me too.
Because it was PG and it came out in 1987, so I was 9 years old. So it's funny, I love Police Academy 1, but it's weird because Citizens on Patrol is kind of my Police Academy.
Yeah, me too. I was actually watching it not that long ago with Bodie, and we loved it. So don't be surprised if that pops up on Pad or $2 late fee in 2025, because I freaking love Police Academy 4. Okay, so let's get to some of the people behind the scenes. And again, we will bring up some people as they pop up occasionally, because they're big deals.
We got some great stuff.
Yeah.
We got some great character actors in here.
The director, Ernest Farino.
So I'm going to kind of fire off, because there's a lot of interesting things here. Zach, movie-wise, as far as episodes and everything he's directed, Steel and Lace was his first movie that he ever directed. He did 4 episodes of Monsters. He did 7 episodes of that Land of the Lost. Well, it was a remake. They rebooted it in the early 90s, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I remember when they did, but I never watched it.
Me neither. I didn't watch it at the time either, because I at that point still loved the original. So I was like, I don't need to see the remake. 2 other weird movies called Josh Kirby, Time Warrior, and 1 episode of another show. So that's all sort of whatever. But here's where things get interesting. For a long time, he worked as a title designer. So he did the movie titles for The Terminator, DEFCON 4, Godzilla 1985, Critters, Night of the Creeps, Slaughterhouse Rock, Hell Comes to Frogtown, Alien Nation, The Abyss, T2, and Nemesis. And then not only that, he did visual effects on The Alien Factor, which is a Maryland movie. That thing was filmed in Maryland. Galaxy of Terror. He worked on the special effects crew for The Thing. Night Beast, another Maryland movie. Dreamscape, a Pad movie right there. Terminator, Dead Heat, Cyborg, which makes sense, fucking Screamers, a movie that we love, and then he also did a show that I love, the Dune Sci-Fi Channel miniseries. He did the effects on that, and he did a movie that I fucking love called Balls of Fury.
Oh, is that the ping pong one?
Yes, yeah. I love that movie with Christopher Walken. It's great.
Never seen
Randy!
it. I gotta watch that.
That was a movie that me and Jeff would get high and watch all the time.
I still have to show Bodie that he's excited to watch Balls of Fury for whatever reason. Probably for you.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
I mean, what a resume. What a resume on that dude. And what a set of balls on that guy. No,
So this is like a production from like Roger Corman and David Dakota and everybody, like that whole sort of crew. I know you have thoughts on David Dakota, right?
So
like, I hear you and Aaron always talking about him.
So David Dakota is a running joke that Paul London and I have from Territory Marks because he's made some interesting movies, and he's not a I don't want to link him into any of the Me Too stuff, but would not be surprised if his closet is a little crowded with skeletons.
Okay. Now we did cover one of his movies, Shorty Babes and Slime Ball Bolorama.
We did. So I don't know. I'm just saying. It's very interesting. He has a very interesting resume, and would not be surprised if. Oofa doofa. Anyways, I'm going to just move along into the writing because, like you said, the writing is very tight. The writing's not perfect. There are some scenes where I'm like, man, they are really padding this, no pun intended, for time. Having a conversation about a bottle of wine for like 30 seconds just goes a little long for me. But Joseph Doherty and Dave Edison are the writers of this film.
Yeah, so all this information I got from that hour-long documentary on the Blu-ray. Joseph Doherty, he used to be a writer for 30-something. I think that's where he got his Emmy, or 2 Emmys, or one of the Emmys, is from 30-something. Remember that show? Remember how big that show was at the time?
Yeah, apparently they're bringing it back.
That's what I hear.
I hear the rumors that Peter Horton, who was, the long-haired blonde guy. Yeah. The long-haired blonde guy. He keeps hinting on his social medias that they're bringing 30-something back.
Okay, sure. I mean, it was, again, like I said, it was 1990, so I was like 11 or 12 years old, but I remember it was such a big deal when it came out. And then I look at them now and I'm like 46 and I'm like, I'm not even 30 something anymore. But
I know, so 30 something, I'm looking at them like they're 40, they're almost 50 something in that show.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely the 90210 scenario. But yeah, so apparently Joseph Doherty wrote the first couple of drafts of it. Then Dave Edison did one pass on it. And then Joseph Doherty did another pass and incorporated some of the stuff that Dave Edison brought to the table. So that's why he also gets a writing credit on it. But it's mostly Joseph Doherty did most of the heavy lifting.
All right.
And I got a couple more interesting behind-the-scenes people that I want to talk about.
Yeah, I got one too, but
okay.
You go.
Okay. Yeah, we'll save you do the composer at the end, and I'll mention the cinematographer, Thomas L. Calloway. Started working as a cinematographer on Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity.
Oh.
Yeah. He also did Creepazoids. He also did, which I think was a David Dakota movie as well.
And I think those are both Corman films as well.
Yes. So this whole crew kind of got its start with Corman and everything. Slumber Party Massacre 2, which is awesome. He was the cinematographer on Action USA that, remember, just got released like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But it was filmed back in the 80s.
Either it was our show or $2 late fee, but I think like the director wanted for us to break down the movie.
Yeah, it was Pad, and it was like we were just starting out, and I didn't have any clue what this movie was, and I thought it was a newer movie type of thing. So I kind of dropped the ball on that because I could have gotten us a free copy. But our friends over at Action broke it down, or discussed it.
I own that film. I watched it. It's great. I love it.
Okay, well, yeah, I dropped the ball on that at the beginning of Podcasting After Dark. That was me.
The ball.
He was also the cinematographer. Zach, did you bring up, when we were talking to David, a movie called Ghetto Blaster?
No, David brought up Ghetto Blaster because we were talking about like enemy. We were talking about Tony Todd's filmography, and one of the movies that we brought up was Enemy Territory.
Yes,
but David got that confused with Ghetto Blaster.
Well, it's just funny because he was the cinematographer for Ghetto Blaster. He was also cinematographer for Demon Wind, Critters 3 and Critters 4, and then more recently, Feast, and a movie that Zach can't wait to watch, Deep Blue Sea 2.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the John Dies at the End episode.
Just a side note, and I really appreciate this from Paulette. She's one of our Patreon members who's at the highest tier. If you become a Patreon member at the highest tier, and if you got a question about a movie, not sure you want to pick it or not, maybe if you don't mind throwing it
Running
our
it
way
past.
first, running it past us. That's always nice because if it's Deep Blue Sea 2, I'm going to say a hard no.
And then finally on my end, editor Christopher Roth. He was the editor on Killer Clowns from Outer Space, 4 episodes of Monsters, Alienator, Demon Wind, Leprechaun, another Podcast After Dark alumni, and Return of the Living Dead Part 3. Zach, do you remember that movie called Crying Freeman with Mark Dacascos?
Yeah, I was so disappointed because I had super high hopes. I believe it was like a Japanese manga.
It was a manga, yeah.
And I remember when it came out, everyone was stoked. You know, it was like The Legend of Ricky O had come out around the same time. Where's that, by the way? How come that's not available on Vinegar Syndrome yet? Because we will break that movie down when it comes to Vinegar
Ricky O's
Syndrome.
great, dude.
But Crying Freeman came out and everyone was like, oh, it was like Fist of the North Star. When Fist of the North Star came out, same reception. Everyone was excited. Wet fart.
And I remember Fangoria covering Fist of the North Star because it has some gruesome violence that all ended up on the cutting room floor, and that sucked, and just go watch the anime.
Right.
But he also he was also the editor for The Dentist, and most recently Hatchet, which I love that series.
Okay, Hatchet and Dentist, sure. There is a connection to Killer Clowns with the composer, of course, but really quickly, we mentioned Ghetto Blaster. I would be remiss in not saying that it stars Richard Hatch from Battlestar Galactica, the original, and the tagline for it is it's got the cover of the poster is like a bunch of gang members in the back of a guy in front with a trucker hat on, holding a shotgun. It's not Richard Hatch, but it says he wants to take the fight to them, even if it means pursuing the gangs all the way back to the ghetto. So when it says he wants to take the fight to them, and it's got a white guy in the front and a bunch of what looks to be like a bunch of black guys in the back, I'm going to say that's a little racist.
It might be a little racist.
Anyways, yeah, so the composer for this movie is John Massari. That name may sound familiar to all y'all because he is the composer for Killer Clowns from Outer Space. We will break that movie down eventually. We'll get to it. It's one of my boy Terry's favorite movies of all the times, and I love it too. We will definitely do that movie down the road.
Ooh,
and
I
also,
hope we do. I hope we do, because then I get to be Zach on that movie because I don't like that movie.
You don't like Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
No, I don't like Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh.
I think it's stupid. I think it's dumb, and I wish it was fucking rated R. It's dumb that it's not.
Interesting. Okay, well.
Yeah, fuck that movie.
That being said.
Yeah, Zach's like, oh no.
I haven't watched it in forever, so, there you go. But I will say, John Massari, I met the dude, super nice guy. And, hey, he's a fan of the genre. He is a Michael Bolton fan. You guys could choose Office Space as a producer. We might just devote a whole pad episode to telling you all the movies you should pick.
or shouldn't. We'll just do it in 2 parts.
Right. So, Cam, thank you again. Well, you can thank us or vilify us at the end of this episode, depending on how well we break down Steel and Lace. But let's get to Steel and Lace.
You said they'd put him away.
Don't let it go.
There's only one safe place now.
The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
The Boys Club lying to save one of their own. 5 years down the road, everybody's forgotten all about it.
Leave it alone, Miss Ruger. Leave my sister's memory alone.
Craig is dead.
Yeah, so's Elvis. What do you want me to do about it?
He was murdered. Cut to pieces.
Well, if he didn't die of shock, loss of blood, and having 80% of his internal organs homogenized, then I think the removal of 7.5 inches of spinal cord probably would have done the trick.
Officially, you didn't see a goddamn thing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's 2 of Danny Emerson's pals dead in 2 days.
In light of what's happened, I'd like to suggest that you take an extra measure of caution in your activities.
You mean don't stand near any open windows?
And if you do, make sure you know who's standing behind you.
You think it's me, don't you?
I don't know what I think. I just know that it's gotten really unhealthy to hang around with you.
All right. After a really cool opening credit sequence where the name of Steel is like kind of etched with a welding torch, and then lace overlaid over that. I was really a big fan of that.
Me too. And apparently the director also created that as well. I'm sure he was like, because this is a micro budget film, I'm sure he was like, well, I can cover the title. That's fine.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, it takes up almost 2 minutes of screen time. So I'm like, for a movie that's, under 90 minutes, sure, why not?
Why not? And the credits repeat anyway, so sure, why not?
And this is all shot in Los Angeles, by the way. So the locations are not listed on the IMDb. However, I feel like there's moments where I'm like, that looks like Santa Monica Airport. That is definitely a downtown LA shot.
I think the bar that Toby goes to, I think I've actually been to that bar in Culver City. I'll bring that up when we get there.
All right, cool.
But so unfortunately, IMDb has literally nothing under the trivia, and location is just Los Angeles. So we're kind of, aside from that documentary that I watched, and you guys kind of got all the information that's sort of important from it, Zach and I really have nothing else knowledge-wise on this film.
No, but I will say really quickly, because I'm about to mention it in the opening of the breakdown, if you go to IMDb and you go under keywords, the first 5 or 6 words that come up for this film are rape and revenge, female rape victim, female nudity, rape victim, and there's 54 more things to describe this film. However, those are the top ones that they list for this movie.
Well, I mean, it's funny because they also give you like, if you like this more, you might also like this. And their number one thing is The Invisible Maniac. And I watched that for the first time. It's 2025 for the first time in I think 2024, 2023. And by the way, it is sleazy as hell. But it also falls in the category that it's a little bit better than you ever think it should be.
I think, unfortunately, there's a connection with one of our pad listeners. I don't want to mention her name, but she knows who she is. And it not being necessarily a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, too. But anyways, we'll move on. Back to Steel and Lace.
Steel and Lace. Movie opens with a nighttime shot of Los Angeles, downtown L.A. in front of a courthouse where a courtroom trial is taking place. There's a cut where it's cool, cut where you're watching the courtroom, the outside the courtroom, and then looks like you're changing the TV station to a courtroom reporter, saying that the highly publicized rape trial of Danny Emerson is taking place. It's interesting that it's Danny Emerson, the guy, the person who's doing the rape, and not the victim being listed in the trial.
Yeah, I mean because we'll get to it, but there's no justice in this world for when rich people are involved.
That's for sure.
And he's definitely supposed to be one of those yuppie assholes from 1990.
It's perfect. The jury has reached the verdict in the highly publicized trial. The reporter gives a quick recap of the fact that the gifted pianist, Gailey Morton, was attacked over a year ago. And then there's a quick shot of Allison, who is the court illustrator. Allison is illustrating Gailey, and she's looking very distraught. And her brother, Albert Morton, walks over to her to comfort her. The TV reporter narrates that he resigned recently from NASA's Artificial Intelligence program. Topical! And doing that has set back the launch of the Prometheus robot probe. No relation to Prometheus the movie.
Well, that's what my notes say. I go, is this movie in the Alien universe?
Yes.
Yes. And real quick, I got to say, all the artwork that Allison, the character Allison is doing, it was done by one artist. It is damn good.
Yeah, it's way better than the notes I do for Bodhi.
Hey, man, those are all heart, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Unlike some of these. No. Anyways, unlike the kid who has the gun later on in this movie.
Yeah.
So this is a really funny moment because Albert is sitting next to Gailey. He's comforting her as the jury's coming back. She tells him not to leave her. He says never. He kisses her and he walks away.
I didn't even pick up on that. That's great.
That's what happens when you watch this movie 3 times. Danny Emerson is the heir to the Emerson Real Estate Company. This was the moment, by the way, where the credits were rolling during this time. but the opening credits to the movie are in the beginning of the movie, and then like all the extra stuff, like the editor, the writer, director, et cetera, it's going on during this sequence. So I text Corey, I'm like, did the credits roll twice? When I could have just ran it back to check, but I'm like, lazy like that. Anyways, the reporter continues. She says, the controversy erupted in the trial when 4 of Emerson's friends testified that he was nowhere near the crime. And then there's a quick flashback to the night of the crime. Gailey is seen leaving a building with her colleagues. They go one way, she goes another. As she walks to her car, she drops her keys and looks up. And all of the 5 therapists are there. Sorry. Musketeers.
I'll take the rapist.
There's 4 of them. And there's a quick cut back to the trial. 4 friends testifying for Danny are sitting in the audience watching nervously. Jury comes back from deliberations. Flash back to Gailey being assaulted by the 4 therapists. And she breaks away from them and runs towards a man who's standing by a car. Very similar to the Equalizer opening shot, by the way.
I know, dude. I know.
I'm like, is that the Equalizer?
And I think that was done on purpose because he looks very heroic, which is why she runs to him. But then he's gonna, not be, obviously.
Does he look heroic when he looks like he has a full head of hair, and then when you realize that he's balding in the back, he's not so heroic after all?
Yeah, it's kind of sad but true. But that
sad but true
would have made him more heroic, and maybe that's why they cast him. But I will say, the cinematographer does his damnedest to not show off that bald spot. He does his best to like sort of shoot around it, but sometimes it is, woo boy, it is large and in charge.
Yeah. Oh, bummer.
And guys and gals, for some context, he has the whole ponytail thing going on, the hair slicked back, trying to cover the bald spot in the back. But so if you look at him straight on, he looks cool and intimidating. The moment he turns his head, you see the giant bald spot in the back of his head. You're like, oh, you guy.
I bet he was really annoyed with John J. York, who has a luscious head of hair.
Dude, that's why I was like, he should be the main guy.
Well, maybe, yeah. Well.
Or maybe, but to your point, maybe he would have come off too heroic and no one would have bought that he was the bad guy.
Fair, yes, because a little bit of bald spot makes you villainous.
Look at my bald spot. Am I the bad guy?
No, you got a great head though, and you do that.
It is good. It's a nice shaved head.
Yeah,
you're it's like very round.
You're not growing it's like kind of like a mullet because he's got like it is short enough. It's like gelled down. Slick back with the long ponytail in the back. It's not sexy. Anyways, she runs to the man, Danny, but we don't know it's him at first. She falls to the ground when she gets to him. Equalizer. He gently brings her up, gets right up in her face, and he says, pretty, very pretty. Note that because it's going to come up often, very often. It's going
to come up 5 more times.
Yeah. She runs off in the other direction, flashes back to the trial. Gailey looks over at Danny, and he kind of glares at her. Flashes back to her again. In the past, she runs back to the 4 dudes who wrap a scarf. Sorry, the 4 therapists who wrap a scarf around her mouth to gag her. Flashes back to the trial. Judge asks for a verdict. Back and forth of Gailey about to get assaulted while the verdict is about to be read. The jury says that due to insufficient evidence, they find Danny Emerson not guilty. The 4 friends get excited, and Gailey looks totally deflated. And everyone who supports her looks bummed out. Albert rushes the judge, yelling something like, how can you allow this? Bailiff holds him back. Danny's friends get ready to leave, and Gailey's just sitting at the table. She looks over at Danny, who looks at her, and he winks. She starts to cry. Albert comes back to comfort her. Meanwhile, Allison continues to sketch sad Gailey. As Albert helps her out of the court, he walks over to Allison, takes the paper from her and crunches it up, says, no more of this. You have all the drawings you're ever going to have. And he throws that drawing in the trash.
Which is funny because that's one of the drawings we see later of Gailey. Maybe she's done multiple ones, I guess, but...
Well, my world building is that she pulled it out of the trash, but it's so smooth and perfect. I'm like...
Well, she would have probably redrawn it then, I imagine,
I'm going to say she pulled it out of the trash.
Yeah,
and then ironed it to get the wrinkles out.
Probably.
Cut to outside of the courtroom. Reporters asking Gailey's lawyer why the judge found Danny not guilty. Lawyer's like, I have no idea. Albert walks out of the courtroom. The reporters chase after him and Gailey. But Albert walks her to a stairway close by, closes the door behind her. He tells her to stay there. I was like, she's going to get raped again. She's going to get raped again. It's going to happen. But it doesn't happen, folks. It doesn't. She's in the stairway by herself. Albert kind of comes out from the door by the stairway to deal with the reporters. Cut to Danny and his 4 friends celebrating in a limo, popping champagne. One of the friends,
he gives Oscar like his like glass of champagne is like 90% head. It's like got a little bit of liquid in there and the rest is all foam. I was like, that was a terrible pour.
Kind of tracks. I'm like, that, but I could see these douchebags doing stuff like that. One of the friends, Toby, says it's all over. And Danny says, this is just the beginning. We're going to turn ourselves around. Something constructive has come out of this little book. And Toby's like, but it's all over now, right, Danny? And Danny says, no. Toby says, what do you mean? Danny says, we're going to turn ourselves around. We're going to turn this business around, expand some horizons. I owe it to you guys for backing me up when that bitch went to the cops. From now on, we're partners, equal partners. The sky's the limit. Bottles of champagnes are open and passed around and everybody toasts.
Because there are no consequences for the rich.
Oh. Trying to keep my adrenaline up, Corey. Don't deflate me here.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
Super true. Cut back to a worried Albert running after Gailey. He follows her up the stairs to the roof because he goes to find her and she's gone. He follows her up to the rooftop of the courthouse and he calls to her. He tells her everything's going to be all right. Let me take you home. And she's crying. She says, you said they put him away, but he's out there somewhere. It's not fair. Albert says, I'll keep them away. I promise. He reaches his hand out to her. She goes to take it. And he says, I'll keep you safe. She says there's only one safe place now. And she falls backward off the building. Albert screams, wow.
Yeah, we get a great performance by Bruce Davison, just being like, ah, as the camera sort of pans up or dollies up and he's like on his back, but she just swan dives. She goes right off the back.
Oh, baby. That was this movie is really heavy, guys. And I know we're making light of it earlier, but Savage Streets was heavy too. So
yeah,
it's dealing with a really heavy subject matter. It's obviously it's horrible, but what happens to these guys is not.
Yeah, no, the payoff will be worth it.
It'll be worth it.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.
And now, back to the show.
From that scene, there's a quick billboard pan-up shots announcing another great Emerson mini mall coming soon in front of a old home. And the logo of Emerson's company is like a evil hand holding the earth. It totally looks like something like Cobra or something like that.
Yeah, dude, or like, I don't know, League of Super Villains or something like that. It's great. I mean, it's well designed, it's cool, but it's totally like an evil organization.
Right, it is.
Like Venom or something, from Mask or whatever.
Yeah. Title card comes up and says 5 years later, and it's at Mr. Spiegel's house. Old man Mr. Spiegel, who looks very familiar to me, by the way.
Oh, really?
His name's William Prince. He was in Spies Like Us, The Stepford Wives, Network, Cyrano de Bergerac, and Walker, Texas Ranger. But no, he is and The Taking of Beverly Hills, a movie we will definitely cover.
And Second Sight, and Spontaneous Combustion, and an episode of Monsters. Bro, there's a lot of connections to monsters in this movie.
And Vice Versa. I believe he's
Vice Versa.
One of the better body swapping movies.
Yeah.
Like Father, Like Son is the best one of all the body swapping movies, in my opinion. But Vice Versa, I think he's like the boss in Vice Versa. He's got a pretty big role in that. And Shakedown with Sam Elliott and Peter Weller. And Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
I was going to say that one too. And the Fall Guy. This dude's been around. This dude fucks. William Prince fucks.
So anyways, I just had to point that out because Mr. Spiegel, a.k.a. Old Man, deserves more credit than he gets. So he's got a contract he's about to sign. And Danny says, I'm so glad we've been able to come to this agreement. And Mr. Spiegel / Old Man looks at the contract and he goes, $50,000. You offered 60. And Danny says, I have expenses, Mr. Spiegel. You should have taken the $60,000 when I offered it. I sent some flowers to the hospital when I heard about your wife's accident. It wasn't an accident and you know it, Old Man says. Danny says, Mr. S, haven't a clue what you're talking about. Why did he sound like Mark Wahlberg there for a second? I don't know.
For a second, he sounds like Mark Wahlberg.
Well, so Craig has that moment too later on, but we'll get to that. Anyways, Spiegel signs the paper, says, get out of here. And Danny says, I'm going to do Mark Wahlberg the rest of the movie as Danny. Not a particularly gracious host. Chalk that up to your recent bad luck. My associates and I will leave you now. You have a lot of packing to do. Be out of the house in 12 hours, or we'll knock it down. With you in it. And my best to your wife.
Dude, 12 hours, man. That is cold-blooded.
Yeah. Really cold-blooded.
Also, I wanted to call out the fact that I did an inflation calculator, and $60K in 1990 is $139,000 now. So that's how much the house was worth. Which that house now, and where it is probably in looked like Los Feliz or something like that. That thing's probably worth like $600K now.
Yeah, still not enough to buy even a fraction of a house in Los Angeles. Maybe a down payment on rent.
Yeah, $139K will get you a studio condo to purchase in like not even North Hollywood, like somewhere outside of North Hollywood.
Yeah, like Riverside.
Right, exactly.
No offense to our friends in Riverside, by the way.
No,
anyways, Danny's...
Riverside is trash.
Yeah, I got some stories. Danny's leaving with his friends, and he says, I want it leveled by 5 tomorrow. Craig, John J. York, says, what about the permits? The permits. And Danny says, level it. We'll worry about the permits later.
Man, boy, how familiar does this sound? It's almost as if nothing has changed in the past, 34 years.
So Toby's looking concerned, and Danny calls him over, and he says, Toby? Toby says, yeah. He goes, what are you, a moron? Toby goes, what? He goes, Danny says, are you somehow retarded? This should have never taken this long. It's an old man in there. Is it too difficult for you to handle? Toby says, no, of course not, but... Danny says, don't you ever make me leave the office for something like this again, huh? When I tell one of you to handle something, that's what I want you to do. Handle it, okay? And then do 500 push-ups. Danny puts on his gloves, takes his sunglasses, gets in the car and drives away, leaving his 4 friends to look like fools.
Because he's that douchebag with those driving gloves, you know?
What's wrong with... Never mind.
And I liked what they say after he leaves, because they're like, I think Toby was like, I thought we were equal partners.
Yeah.
And I like how Oscar was like, well, some partners are more equal than others.
Exactly. At that point, Craig goes, Norman, who's, Rat from Fast Times, says, it's late. And he walks off. Craig goes, I'm gone. He walks off in another direction. And he gets in his Mustang.
It reminds me of Swingers, because they all went there in their own car, and they all go in separate directions as they leave.
Suddenly, Pick Up the Pieces by Average White Band starts playing. Fun fact, Corey and I saw that film with our buddy Terry and another dude who will remain nameless, and Femme French, in the Hollywood Cemetery years ago.
Yeah.
And Corey was blazed out of his mind on brownies or
out
mushrooms
of my
or something.
mind. Yeah.
And the person he was with that he kind of drove home with scared the hell out of the guy. It scared the hell out of the guy because Corey was so blazed. Very funny.
Yeah, I have my moments.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I loved it. Kind of got what he deserved. Anyways, they go off. A classic T-Bird starts following Craig.
And I kind of glossed over it, but yeah, you're right. Craig has a real sweet, like, white Mustang. But it's like, it is like 1989 Mustang. It's not like, like a classic one, but it does look really cool.
It's the Vanilla Ice Mustang is what it is, Yeah. But the car that's following him is way better.
Yeah. Oh, fuck
anyways,
yeah.
Carman, Craig. Craig has car troubles and everything goes haywire. He pulls over and everything's fried when he pops the hood up and he yells out, "Son of a goddamn bitch." Tiber pulls over. Out walks a hot babe, because she is. And she walks over to Craig.
She's smoking hot, and she's played by J. Cynthia Brooks, who has 4 or 5 things on her IMDb. But, Zach, one of those things is Thunder in Paradise with Hulk Hogan, and the other one of those 5 things is Cold Fire with Wings Hauser.
Well, okay.
Quite the collection of oddities right there.
Hey, it's me, Terrible Leon. Do you want to be on my new TV show?
Sure.
Okay, I need you to do something for me.
Okay.
Hey, it's Wings Hauser. You want to be on my new TV show?
Sure.
Okay, well, you got to do something for me.
Okay. What that was is collate files, because they needed someone to do their tax. Anyways, Tiber pulls over. She walks out. She walks over to Craig, asks if he's got car trouble. He says, yeah, up and died on me. He suddenly puts on this kind of New York kind of attitude. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah, so real quick, speaking of New York attitudes, Zach and I are going to be talking about some shows by Stephen J. Cannell next week on 80s Kids Unite, and I was watching an episode of Greatest American Hero, and I guess the show takes place in California, SoCal, I think LA, but yeah. Michael Pare is one of his students in the episode that I watched, and he's got a complete Brooklyn accent in it, and then his girlfriend does too, and I was like, I thought this took place in LA. Is it supposed to be in New York? No, it's just Michael Pare has a New York accent, and so does his girlfriend. And they were okay with that. That was fine for the creators of Greatest American Hero.
Well, I have a story about Michael Pare and how he got that role. I don't know if you, Corey, have heard his interview that he did on How Did This Get Made way back when. But he talks about in that interview, I believe he did in our interview that we did with him for $2 late fee, or maybe not. Anyways, how he got that role on Greatest American Hero, and it is wild. So we will save that for 80s Kids Unite.
I was going to say, you got to retell it on 80s Kids Unite.
We definitely will. Anyways, back to Werewolf Man. Craig's like, yeah, you know about cars? And she says, I know a fucked one when I see one, and I'm looking at one right now. She looks right at him, by the way, when she says that. Must have been a power surge. She slams the hood down on the car and almost slams his fingers.
I like that. He was like, whoa, it was actually legit close.
Right. He asks for a ride. She kind of drops her face down, looking down at his face, and gets closer to him, and she goes, you broke your nose once. Makes your face more interesting. She tells him to get in the car, and as they're driving, she asks what he does for a living. He says, I work for a friend. She says, yeah. Craig says, yeah. He could be a real prince sometimes. He could be a real dick sometimes. She asks where he lives. Craig, not Danny. And Craig says, Santa Monica. And she says, I know someplace closer. And he watches her stroke the shifter. They pull in,
dude. He's like, ugh.
It's on. They pull into a motel.
The Cinema Spa Motel.
Yes, thank you for seeing that, because I couldn't see it in the widescreen version.
Oh, interesting.
It was cropped at the top.
Oh, wow, that's funny, actually. Okay, I was not expecting us to actually pick out any differences in the aspect ratio, but that is funny that you couldn't see that.
Well, I'm now realizing that was a thing when widescreen started. People started waking up to why widescreen was important in the 90s. And some shows would format it for widescreen, but then they're cutting it off. So cropping it down.
And Seinfeld was one of those. So it's really funny because, so they basically remastered Seinfeld in HD, but they did it in widescreen format, and that's what you can find like on Netflix and stuff like that. They use those files. Then just this year, late 2024, just late last year, they released Seinfeld both on Blu-ray, because it only had ever been on DVD. They released it on Blu-ray. They used the widescreen file that they used for Netflix, but then they also released it on 4K, but they actually remastered the originals on 4K, so they are in the proper aspect ratio. So it's like the 4K and the Blu-rays don't actually mirror each other. If you want the original aspect ratio, you either need to buy the DVDs, which I have the DVD box set, which I don't need to double dip into getting Seinfeld in 4K. I really don't. But the only way to get it in the aspect ratio, the proper aspect ratio, is the 4K. Now, I have to give props to Disney Plus, because when Disney acquired the Simpsons stuff, Simpsons episodes from Hulu and Fox, they had remastered all of those in widescreen, and Disney actually went through and remastered the originals in the original aspect ratio. So now on Disney Plus, you can actually choose for Simpsons whether you want to watch it in the original aspect ratio or in the widescreen aspect ratio. But yeah, a lot of these TV shows, when HD TVs came out and now everybody has a widescreen television, they remastered these shows in widescreen, but this is when you're actually losing a part of the show.
Yeah. Boom, 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 boom.
I said all of that, and that's all you had to say, but it was perfect. It was fucking perfect.
I was kind of hoping you would have said it like Seinfeld, but that's a whole other, I'm not going to have you redo it.
What's the deal with aspect ratios?
So anyways,
back to the Cinema Spa Motel that Zach couldn't read.
It's so trashy. It looks like it's one of those places that they book it by the hour.
Yeah.
I stayed in one of those once down here when I came down to a Fangoria convention. My brother Eric and I checked into a place, and they're like, "Do you want it by the hour?" And we're both like, "No, by the day. Like, we want it for the day." And they're like, because everything was sold out. Fangoria was so popular at that time. Everything in the area was gone. Anyways, we got the place, turned the TV on. First thing that comes on is porn. And we're just like, oh man. And we leave it on for like a minute.
Sure.
And then I'm like, we got to turn this off. And we just try to go to bed. There's cockroaches in the bathroom. It's disgusting. So gross.
Oh, man.
Ooh, baby. Oh, baby. Good times. Morongo. Anyways, she's the woman is pouring a glass of champagne. She does not have a name, by the way.
No, even on IMDb, she's like Girl and T-Bird.
Yeah. So she's asking Craig what he does for Danny. And he says, I help out with things. And she goes, sounds fascinating. She pours the glass of champagne. Craig says, how about you? What do you do? She says, something of a bookkeeper, checks and balance, make sure people pay their debts. And then she walks over to him and she grabs him by the tie. He starts kissing her. She says, tell me about your friend. How long have you known him? Craig says, we go way back. They start making out. She says, I bet you'd do anything for your friend. Lie, cheat, steal for him, maybe even be willing to die for him. She says, would you be willing to die for your friend? Craig says, yeah, for Danny, sure.
And this doesn't turn him off at all, by the way. He's still like, I'm going to get some.
Yeah, because, that's what you do when you make out with someone, talk about your friend.
Yeah, of course.
And subtly, she goes, I'm really glad you said that because I have something to show you. She steps away from him, strokes his face, and suddenly starts ripping the skin off of her neck. Of course, Craig starts freaking out. She pulls the flesh off her face. It's a mask and reveals it's Gailey. Dun, dun, dun. She looks up at him. He says, no. She grabs him, bear hugs him, starts kissing him while a drill goes through his chest, spraying blood all over the place. Oh,
man. So right out of the gate, this is the first kill. We're like 15, maybe 17 minutes into the movie. Like, this is boom, boom, boom. It's this movie's going to go by fast. And, first kill
this
right out of the gate.
This breakdown's going to go by fast, hopefully.
Probably. But right out of the gate, bro, first kill, fucking awesome. A Mortal Kombat fatality, something like Sector or Cyrax would do. But yeah, this like drill comes out of her chest, goes through his chest, out his back, and then, he dropped, but it's great because he's like going, blah, 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 blah. He's doing a great job of acting like he's getting all grind up and everything. And, she pulls it back in and he falls over dead and she just looks down at him. But she does a good job of these like real, like intense stares and everything, like looks and everything. I like what she's doing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like she's clearly an android, and you find this out with right now because you see from her perspective, and she's looking at a dead Craig, and you see like a computer grid going down. By the way, every time right before the kill happens, I want you to say, "Finish him."
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Okay. Scene fades to cut to Allison's place, and there's a sketch of a little kid holding a smoking gun with a big smile on its face, and she's pensively drinking coffee while her manager, Duncan, not Duncan from He-Man, because that would be different,
Duncan,
looks on at her drawing. He's looking at her sketches.
And so Duncan is played by Nick Tate. Dude has like 120 credits to his name. He's still working to today.
Cool.
For me, one of the more exciting things that he actually did a voice, because he does like a lot of voice acting role and everything. But he actually did the voice of this character in the Mad Max video game that came out in like 2000 and I think like 15 or something like that. 2015. But he plays a voice in that game called The Mystic, which is pretty great. But he's done so much work. He's done some video game work. He's done some voiceover work. And he's done, some movies and TV and stuff like that. I'm kind of scrolling through his IMDb. He's a British guy, so there's like a lot of the earlier stuff I don't recognize at all.
He's a British guy, so he does like, British things.
Sherlock Holmes shit, you know what I mean? BBC shit. Sorry, David.
David's like, how dare you?
I said good day, sir.
Meanwhile, if Allison's not drinking coffee or drinking something, she's smoking throughout this entire movie, by the way.
Yeah, and as an ex-smoker, man, I really makes me want to smoke. But real quick, Zach, we're gonna see more of it later. But man, add this to the list of movie apartments that we have loved in the past. Like,
it's pretty cool.
Wings Hausers from Vice Squad, and it's all, what it is for me? It's all of those downtown like arts district apartments, loft apartments that we've seen. I think we saw one in Trancers and stuff like that. But man, this is another one. This is another cool like 80s, 90s freaking movie apartment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. With the checkerboard floor in the kitchen.
Yep.
So Duncan's looking at her drawings. She asks what he thinks. He goes, "They're brilliant." She gets excited. He says, "It's some of your best work." He says, "But I think you're being rather liberal with the project that we pitched to our client." He says they wanted pictures of children. She goes, "I gave them pictures of children." She points at the kid with the gun. And Duncan says, the client wanted pictures of kids, like talking. They don't want pictures of kids in their coffee table books in Beverly Hills looking like that. She gets upset and says, "I won't castrate my art." And Duncan says, "It's not castration I'm talking about." And she goes, "I'm not selling out." Duncan says basically selling out will pay for a great deal of integrity down the road.
Yeah.
He goes, "You know how I feel about tampering with success." And she goes, No, I'm not doing another book about courtroom sketches. She goes, "I haven't done a trial in 5 years, wink, wink." And he goes, "No, I want you to look at old sketches of the courtroom people and then find them today. Sketch what they look like today." And she gets excited about that. How they've changed, how they haven't changed. She smiles and says, "I could probably get Clippy to help." Duncan says, yes, I did say Clippy. Duncan says, oh yeah. Duncan kind of gets a little jealous. He looks jealous. And he says, "Oh yeah, that police officer friend of yours, Detective Dunn." And she says, "Yeah, he could probably help me with something like this." And Allison then says, "Maybe he's changed in the past couple of years. Maybe he's grown a mustache and gained a few pounds." Immediately cut to a cop that fits that description of a guy who's gained a few pounds and he's got a mustache. And then right behind him, Detective Dunn comes in, who is David Naughton. Dun, dun, dun.
Dude, that was such a great like visual audio gag.
Very funny.
You know? Yeah, it was very good. That was a slick one because David Naughton comes like right behind, walks up right behind him. He doesn't have a mustache and he's in good shape. But yeah, that one doopy cop right there. But I'm with you, buddy. I was picking up some cues that maybe Duncan was like had a crush on her. He's like obviously older than her. But I kind of get the sense that he kind of has a crush on her. It doesn't really go anywhere, but I guess it kind of leads to like why he's with her later when meets his untimely demise, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's not just her manager, but he obviously you get a sense that he wants more.
Yeah, but I like that they don't really. It only comes through from his acting. It's not in the script and it's not in anywhere else, but it's a decision that he, as an actor, made, and I think it was the right one. I actually really, he's only in this movie for like 10 minutes total, but I really liked him actually.
Yeah, me too. I totally agree. Handsome David Naughton walks into the hotel crime scene. Dunn says, what's all the squawk on the radio about? It's just a stiff. I love that when lines are written, then you're like, clearly this guy is trying to write for noir.
Yeah.
This is not noir.
Yeah.
And the other detective lifts the covering over Craig and looks at Craig's mutilated body.
To kind of go to your point of being sort of noirish, when this was written, the original title was Lady Lazarus. And I
like
think
that more, actually.
I actually kind of do too, but it also kind of gives it more of a noir tone than Steel and Lace does.
Yeah. And, I haven't tracked when Eve of Destruction came out, but I feel like this is around the same time. I'm going to look it up, actually. 91. Okay.
Yeah, so Eve of Destruction was 1991. Yeah, interesting. It's always like that, man. Like, remember there was the 2 Mummy movies that came out? There was the Brendan Fraser one, and then there was like another one, and then, Deep Star 6, Leviathan. It always happens that way.
Yeah. I mean, clearly this is a very particular genre. Lady Terminator, I think, is another one with, speaking of, Sandal Bergman, I think she's in that.
Yep.
Anyways, this is a very niche genre, but I like it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
the cyborg revenge girl genre, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Dunn comments that it looks like someone dropped a bowling ball through Craig's body. The other detective says that that Craig came in with a blonde girl. They were here for an hour. The manager came in to check in after the hour, couldn't find the blonde, but found Craig dead. Explains why they're there in the first place. Suddenly, Schumann, who is the forensic expert, walks in. Who is Schumann?
He's fucking Squiggy, man, from fucking Lenny and Squiggy. Holy shit.
So...
Oh, sorry, David L. Lander, by the way. Not that that wouldn't fly if no one would know that, but Squiggy, Lenny and Squiggy, everyone fucking knows that.
He's such a good actor,
And he's so much fun in this movie.
Yeah, you see so many people nowadays on Netflix shows, or you watch HBO and oh gosh, what's his name from Westworld, and Jeffrey Wright. That guy's like he's in like every HBO show, which God bless these guys for having a career. But like you see the same actors in all the same Netflix shows, like everything on Apple TV, blah blah blah. That wasn't like that in the 80s and 90s, So if you saw another actor from something and they pop up, you're like, oh, that's cool. Like nowadays you're like, oh, of course this guy's in it again. Of course this guy's. I just loved seeing this guy, Schumann, and Schumann's a great character because, Dunn's asking him he's like, basically, tell me about this guy. And he's like, he's a guy with a hole in his body, and he says, tell me when and how. Schumann goes, when, how, when, and how. He says like 3 times.
Great.
It's really funny.
Great. I love it.
The other detective finds a wallet. Dunn looks through it. It's got $1,000 cash in it, all his credit cards. And as Dunn's looking through it more, he pulls out a business card, and it's from Emerson Realty. Cut to Emerson Realty in the boardroom of Danny's boardroom.
Dude, this boardroom is the best set in the entire movie, and they go back to it. Like, it's the most used set in the entire movie, so I get it, but it's also the best looking one. It's really cool. There's like these marble sort of wall type of thing going on, but then like there's the Emerson, that badass logo that we were talking about behind like Danny, but it's like in red. It's like so telegraphed that it's so evil, but it works, man. It's like, it so works for the time of like what we expect from the business villain. I mean, this movie, you know, is it's post RoboCop and everything. So like it's already playing into established tropes that we sort of understand. And so they don't have to like rebuild these tropes. Like, we get them like right out of the gate, but like it works. It all fucking works because, again, this movie has to be economical at an hour and 20, from anywhere from an hour and 29 minutes to an hour and 33 minutes. Regardless of the runtime, this movie is very economical in how it sort of portrays things and sort of like, you know, like the visual language of it.
No, I totally agree. I love the boardroom. We'll see it often. It gets recycled quite a few times in this movie, but it also reminds me of in Better Call Saul. Like, Saul has this elaborate over the top office, and then it's in a strip mall office space, because the actual office that this is in, the building, is like downtown LA, shitty, you know.
Well, it's supposed to be right
office.
it's supposed to be right by a Capitol Records building.
Yeah, and it kind of looks like it. It looks pretty crappy. According to Duncan, there's not a decent restaurant within a 2-mile radius of Capitol Records building. However, I disagree. Cafe 101, which I don't think is even there anymore, is fantastic. Anyways.
That's our plug for Cafe 101. That's no longer there anymore.
So Danny walks in all professional. He says the three surviving musketeers / therapists are there. And Danny walks in. Everyone's looking upset. And he's like, we got a lot to cover before lunch. And Norman, Rat from Fast Times, kind of interrupts. And Danny continues and ignores Norman. And Toby says, Daniel Craig is dead. And Danny goes, yeah, so is Elvis. What do you want me to do about it, huh? Oscar says, he was murdered, cut to pieces. Danny just sighs and goes, everybody knows that Craig was playing hooker roulette on Hollywood Boulevard for too long. His luck ran out. That's all. I'm going to do 500 push-ups. And Norman goes, yeah, well, we were just thinking. And Danny goes, well, stop thinking. Stick to what you know. And then they're all looking very forlorn. He goes, where the hell did you guys get those faces? You can't be that busted up about Craig. And Norman goes, yeah, but he was a friend. Toby goes, he was a partner. Danny goes, he was a liability. He was a stupid man. He died a stupid death.
I love that. He died a stupid death.
Right. And then Oscar's like, well, shouldn't we do something anyways? And Danny's like what? You know, Oscar's like, I don't know. How about a minute of silence? And Danny says, do you know how much business we have to get through this morning? Huh? And Oscar says, half a minute?
Yeah, I like Oscar, dude.
And Danny's like, all right. And everyone stands up and Danny takes out his pocket watch, which was such a like an 80s thing, you know, to have a pocket. I remember I wanted a pocket watch so bad. And when I finally got one, I'm like, why do I have this?
Why do I have this?
Because I just wanted the Transformer watch. Anyways, he takes out his watch. Maybe like 5 seconds go by, maybe less, like 2 seconds.
Because it's actually making the ticking sound, so like it's painful, you know?
Right. And he says, all right, that's plenty. And Oscar goes, I don't think that was even 30 seconds.
I love that because Oscar sort of says it to himself, but I love that they even put that in the movie, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great moment.
I know.
And Danny tells him all to sit down. Cut to outside the police station. Next scene, and then inside the police station, Dunn's at his desk, and Schumann walks in.
Just call him Squiggy.
Squiggy walks in. They talk about how horrible the wound was on Craig. And as they're doing that, Dunn says, you make it sound like he choked on a chicken bone. Schumann thinks that's hilarious. And then suddenly out of nowhere, Dunn gets called into his captain's office. Dunn puts on his jacket and starts to walk in. And Schumann says, jacket's a nice touch. Maybe he'll take you out to lunch. And then Dunn goes, shouldn't you be experimenting on things that are defenseless? Which I thought was
I love
funny.
their sort of like contentious relationship, you know? But
Yeah.
it's like, it's not bad. It's just they kind of like poke at each other a little bit.
They definitely do. he walks into his captain's office, and the captain is played by Dial Tone from G.I. Joe. But who is Dial Tone from G.I. Joe?
Yep, that's right. Hank Garrett. Yep, he played Dial Tone in the movie and in, on the show itself. And then also there's a lady, her character's name is Trips in there, but she's played by Beverly Mickens. Zach, do you remember the show called Square One Television?
I've talked about Square One with Andre Gower from Monster Squad because he was in an episode of Square One way back when. I love Square One. It had a show on it called Math Man. It was like this little robot math man that would go around.
Dude, so when I saw her, I was like, oh, she kind of looks familiar. And I figured, I'll just kind of look up all the side characters and everything. And I didn't recognize her from anything else. And then I see the name and the logo for Square One Television. And literally, it's like the Matrix. I'm going, oh, as a memory that's been buried since 1987, comes flooding back to me. And I was like, oh my God, I remember this show. Holy fucking shit. We are going to have to talk about Square One Television on TV Obscura one of these days.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a PBS Obscura, PBS Obscura, Square One, Bloodhound, 3-2-1 Contact.
Yep.
Right. It definitely got to go down that road. I can't wait because I love Square One.
So Square One was a PBS show?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay.
Pretty
Interesting. But but more so, Hank Garrett, the voice of fucking Dial Tone in G.I. Joe, I was like, holy fucking shit. And of course, he's been in a million other things and a lot, other voices and stuff, but fucking Dial Tone.
I mean, he has been in. I just want to point out he was in Death Wish, Amityville Horror, but he's also in 3 Days of the Condor. He's actually one of the scariest characters in 3 Days of the Condor. He plays the mailman. And yeah, love that dude. Dial Tone, not my favorite character on G.I. Joe, even though he looked like Jack Flack from Cloak and Dagger, and was also him and Mainframe were basically the same G.I. Joes.
But I loved my Dial Tone toy because I love the backpack that it came with. The fact that the mouthpiece kind of moved up and down,
That's cool.
But my favorite part of him was his gun. I specifically liked the machine gun that he came with. I don't know anything about guns, but I just like that one. I thought it was really cool looking for some reason.
No, I agree. I agree. I love that toy too. So anyways, Dunn walks in. He looks annoyed when Captain introduces Trips to him. And Dunn says, I know why you're here. She's the DA. He goes, you're trying to build a case against Emerson. Dunn says, there's a half a dozen state and federal officials that want to bring him down. Tripp says, we've spent 2 years putting a case together against Emerson. Racketeering, extortion, bribery. And we're close. We're too close to let it fall apart now. He'll be in front of a grand jury by the end of the month if we can keep control. And Dunn says, well, who killed Craig? And she says, the mob, maybe? We're working on an inner circle phase. Dunn says, you've done such a fine job now. And Tripp says, we don't want him or anyone in his organization spooked by what's going on. And Dunn says, so? Tripp says, so look like you're doing your job. And the captain just kind of raises his eyebrows. Cut back to Dunn's desk. And Allison's sitting there looking at photos of Craig. Suddenly, Dunn comes out of the office. And he says, what the hell are you doing here? And she goes, nice to see you too, Clippy. And he goes, my name is Clifford. She's smoking, by the way. He takes a cigarette out of her hand and puts it out. By the way, he has a sign that says no smoking on his desk.
Of course.
Yes.
She's I have a huge crush on Allison. She is a garbage human. We've talked about these before. We're our main characters that we're supposed to like, they're actually fucking garbage. The fact that she calls him Clippy constantly, she thinks it's cute, but he keeps saying, don't fucking call me that. I think it's rude as fuck that she keeps calling him Clippy.
And they sleep together.
Well, she's fucking hot. She's out of his fucking league. I would sleep with her too if she was calling me Clippy and that wasn't my goddamn name. But that's besides the point. She's still a garbage character, a garbage human being.
I might interject and say she's out of David Naughton's league.
Yes, she definitely is. Both Clippy and David Naughton. She's out of both of their leagues.
Yes. He says, what can I help you with? She goes, I'm doing a new book. I need your help finding people in these cases. And he goes, I don't have time to help you with this. She goes to look
I don't have time for that. I have a real job.
I got a real job. She goes to look at Craig's file. Dunn closes it up and says, I thought you were interested in old cases. This happened last night. She goes, I know this guy. And Dunn says, how? She says, he was one of the defense witnesses at Danny's trial. And Dunn says, why don't you try to get involved with something more wholesome? And Allison says, I want to know the rest of the story. Unfinished episodes. Dunn says, since I can't comment on current investigations, it's off limits to civilians. She gets up and walks away. And he says, why can't you just leave things alone? She goes, it's not in my nature. She walks off. He says, damn. And he just shakes his head. He picks up the phone and calls for his captain. Cut back to the Emerson office, and Oscar's looking at a photo of the 5 musketeers. And he says, hard to believe. He's talking to himself. Good old Craig is gone. Miss him already. 5 musketeers is what everyone called us. Turns out Toby's there too. And Toby says, you're the only one that ever called us that.
And I like it goes, he's just still talking to himself. Oscar's like, I wonder why it never caught on.
Yeah. Woman comes in the office, Miss Faraday, you'll find out later. And she's stroking her blouse, her open part of her blouse. And very seductively. She goes,
What did you call her, by the way?
Ms. Faraday, that's her name.
Oh, what?
You find that out later.
Oh, it's Miss Fairweather.
Oh, Fairweather? Oh, there's
Faraday.
Guys, there's
a Faraday cage is what you put. It's what's on the back of the proton packs in Ghostbusters. A Faraday cage. It's Miss Fairweather.
Nerd alert. Yeah, no. Well, apparently, there's no subtitles for this movie, guys. So, like, I was rewinding things. They mumble at times, and I'm like, "What did he say?" Damn, I'm not going to write that down.
In Zach's defense, there's actually no subtitles on the Blu-ray either. So, Zach, you didn't miss out on that at least.
Thank you, Vinegar Syndrome, for no subtitles. And so she says there's going to be they're taking up a collection for Craig's funeral. And she asks when the service is going to be held. They're taking up a collection for flowers. She leaves, and Oscar says, where's she been hiding at? And Toby says, she's from the pool. And Oscar says, you taking a dip in the pool lately? And Toby says, office affairs are more trouble than they're worth. And Oscar says, but that makes them more fun. Toby just laughs. And he says, well, who do you think did it? Who do you think stiffed Craig? Toby says, I think everyone else thinks it's rough trade from the boulevard. And Oscar says, if I were you, I keep a bag packed, stay liquid, and I would only believe half of what I heard around this place.
So, Zach, let me ask you something. Do you think Miss Faraday, a.k.a. Miss Fairweather, do you think that at this... I know. Do you think at this point, is she Gailey? I mean, spoiler alert, it's going to be Gailey later, but do you think she's Gailey right now? Like, doing some, like, real, like, deep-level infiltration?
Oh.
I mean, it's not like she doesn't know where they work, you know? It's a common knowledge. It's something they can look up.
It's a good question. I don't think so. I feel like it's like happens. Well, I guess it is.
So if not, does Gailey kill the real Miss Faraday later?
I think so, because isn't there like a side note comment about like what happened to the secretary? Feel like there was, but
yeah, I don't know. Honestly, truthful, like my gut is telling me that right there is the real Miss Fairweather. But then the question is, if it's not later, did Gailey kill the real Miss Fairweather? Because she kills Duncan later, and that's kind of like one of those like innocent kills. So then we don't really know if is she capable of killing innocent people then.
I'm Robert Stack, and these are the unsolved mysteries we'll be discussing this evening.
And it's funny because for a sleazy, no-budget film that is somehow better than we ever thought it would be, there's also not a lot of, like, glaring holes in the plot either.
No, you're right.
But this is one of them. This is one of them, though.
Yeah. And, yeah, this is definitely one of them.
Because if that is Gailey, then why doesn't she just kill them both right here and right now?
Because she wants to play with them.
That's another point. So anyway, hey, you know what, guys and gals, if you've seen the movie, leave us a comment on the socials or on Patreon or whatever. Tell us what you think. Is Miss Fairweather, aka Miss Faraday, is this Gailey right now, or is it Gailey later and she had to dispose of Miss Faraday's body?
And when Corey says, right here, right now, do you think of the song, right here, right now, there is no other place I'd rather be?
Good one, buddy. You nailed that.
I used to cover that song. I don't know why, though. God, and
never
Gin
hated
Blossoms.
it.
I never hated it, but we covered like Gin Blossoms and Jealousy Road. And anyways,
is that considered? That's all new metal, right? Like Gin Blossoms and stuff. I mean, I know there's variations.
I think it's like considered pop, like 90,
okay,
late 80s, early 90s pop. Yeah,
pop.
anyways.
Okay, all right.
Cut back to police station. Dunn's in the captain's office. He says, "You want me to do what?" And Captain says, "Stay with that girl." And Dunn says, "Allison Ruger, why?" Captain says, "She represents the kind of threat that D.A. Trips was talking about." Dunn says, "She's writing a book about a case that no one remembers or cares about, even though it's about Danny Emerson."
Yeah.
And the captain says, "You keep an eye on her. You tell her you want to help her. Keep her away from Emerson and his pals." And Dunn says, "There's a history here with her, Captain." The captain doesn't care.
Because I do like how he's like, "Tell me about it later." He's like, just tell me about the history later. I don't care.
I don't care. This is the last scene you're ever going to see me in. I got to go back to playing dial tone.
Dial tone.
Cut to Allison in her apartment, looking at a picture that she drew of Gilly that her brother crunched up and threw in the trash. This is the one, and it's
Yeah.
like perfect, right?
Yeah.
There's a knock at her door. She answers it, and it's done with a bottle of wine. And there's almost a minute-long exchange about said bottle of wine. It's boring as hell.
Glad you didn't transcribe all of that.
A lot of this next scene I didn't, because a lot of it's just fluff.
It's just fluff. It's just them, their characters getting sort of back together, back to knowing each other type of thing. You know, you get a sense that they've been maybe broken up for like a couple of years now at this point.
Right. She invites Clippy in.
Clippy. Oh my God. What an
asshole.
Not Clippy, not Cliffy, not Clifford, but no, her. She's an asshole.
Because the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. All sorts of women that are like her. So cut to a woman at a bar putting on lipstick, looking in a mirror at the bar. And this is kind of a bait and switch moment, by the way, because you think, oh, this has got to be Gailey.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it's a good bait and switch,
It's a
honestly.
really good bait and switch. I love it.
It is. And this bar right here, by the way, there's a possibility it's called the Tattletale in Culver City. I used to go there all the time back in the day. I freaking love that bar. It looks if it's not, it looks very similar to that one.
Fun fact, my nickname for Corey is Tattletale.
No, it's not. I can keep a secret.
Toby is picking up Toby's at the bar with a man. No, Toby is sitting in a booth with a dude. He's Agent Spoon.
He's Agent Spoon, played by John DeMita, who is a prolific voice actor. He has up to almost 180 credits to his name. I mean, he's doing like stuff for Despicable Me 4, like most recently. But he's done video game work, like shit that I've played, Vampire Hunter D, like anime movies that I've fucking seen. But the connection to the director, he was in both of those Josh Kirby movies that the director did that I guess was like straight to video back in 1995. So he was in both of those. I mean, he did some voices in Aeon Flux for Liquid Television and stuff like that. This guy's been around for his episode of Silk Stockings and stuff. I really like this actor. Like, I really like sort of his face and everything. I thought he was really interesting in this scene.
Yeah, no, me too. This whole exchange is really good.
It is. It really is.
The man, Mr. Spoon, Agent Spoon, says you've fallen in with wrong people. It would behoove you to get out while you can. And Toby says, it's not me, it's them. I'm pretty much an innocent victim here. The man, Agent Spoon, I wrote the man because you don't find out that his name's Agent Spoon until the end.
Yeah, I've done that before in transcriptions where you're like, you name them once you find out what their name is.
Right. Agent Spoon says, the FBI says you participated in criminal activities under the command of Daniel Emerson. And Toby says, is that the same as being an accomplice? Agent Spoon says, well, you can speak freely, as in with formal immunity from prosecution. And Toby says, then yes, I was. Agent Spoon says, then do we have a deal?
And Agent Spoon has got this, like, he's very, like, it's not monotone because he has some inflection in his voice, but, like, he never blinks. He looks straight ahead, like, at Toby the whole time. So you're getting this sense that there's something off about him, but at the same time, I think you're okay with it because he's an FBI agent. And at this point, we've already talked about it with, like, the hidden and whatnot. There's this trope that FBI agents are supposed to be, like, the nerds of the police, of the law enforcement community. So, like, we already expect in movies for FBI agents to be a little awkward. So you're like, okay, maybe it's just that. But he's very odd, but in a very interesting way.
Very robotic.
Yep.
So Agent Spoon says, we have the makings of a deal. And Toby says, with a side order of federal protection? Because Danny is the kind of guy who would... Agent says, do what? Toby stops himself and says, do you have a first name? And Spoon gets really close to Toby's face. He says...
Yeah, they actually make a whole new shot for this. They get, like, really close, and there's, like, this long beat. And then Agent Spoon just goes, yes, I do. But he doesn't say what it is. And then there's still, like, another long beat of both of them looking at each other. And Toby's just like, okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's actually the best part of the scene.
It is.
And Spoon says, I have something for you. He pulls out a briefcase and he says, it's a discreet tape recorder. Toby goes to close the case and says, don't open that in here. And Spoon says, we need to move quickly. And Spoon closes the case. And Toby says, I'm going to go out back and you can follow me later. Spoon says, sounds like a good plan. The camera pans as Toby leaves, and the camera pans past the woman who was putting on lipstick earlier. Like, is that going to be Gailey? We'll find out.
And it's weird because she kind of has, like, Gailey's features, like, sort of like the way her jaw, like, they did a great job of casting this lady as the red herring.
I totally agree. Cut back to Allison and Dunn at Allison's place looking at sketches of Allison and naked.
Yeah, naked.
Dunn says, one of us likes to see how things end, and the other has seen too many things end wrong. And Allison asks, why did you come here tonight? And Dunn says, to see you. I don't like this scene because I just feel like it's kind of flat. And Allison says, things are connected. Things don't just happen for a reason. And Dunn moves in super close to her while she's babbling on about this nonsense, and they start making out.
Yeah.
Like, I glazed over the scene really quickly because I'm like, it's kind of a throwaway scene.
I actually don't really kind of like their relationship too much,
Yeah, well, you hate her, so you love her.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, seriously. Probably the best part of this scene is that there's a drawing of Allison, and she's, like, sort of nude. You get a little nip slip, and I was like, oh, nip slip.
I'm sure he loved that.
I
Cut back to Spoon and Toby. Oh, Toby. I don't know why I think of Andrew Dice Clay with Toby. It's whatever. Anyways, they're in the alley of the bar as Spoon is putting on the wire. He's getting really close to Toby.
It's starting to get weird.
And Toby and Spoon goes, I don't think I've acknowledged how difficult this must be for you. With loyalties like you have with Daniel Emerson, you've been close friends for more than a decade. That decision must have created a great deal of soul searching. Toby asks if there's any cash money coming out of this, and Spoon says, trust me, you will be taken care of. Spoon gets down on one knee. He goes, Mr. Worth, Toby, if I may, that in my line of work, I come in daily contact with the scum of the earth, the lowest of humans. And he opens the briefcase. And when he opens the briefcase, there's a white pantsuit in there and pink heels.
Yeah, high heels.
Spoon continues to talk. And he goes, when I meet an honest, conscience-driven innocent like yourself, it moves me. Spoon stands up and he takes his tie off. He says, it moves me deeply. He starts to unbutton his shirt.
Toby's getting a little bit like, what's happening here?
This is amazing. Toby looks worried. Spoon says, I want to get to know you more. Find out what makes you tick. Learn how you can throw your so-called friend to the lions for all he's done for you. What would the others think when they find out you've cut a deal? Norman, Oscar, Daniel. What about your friends, Toby? Toby just looks nervous and laughs. Toby says, I don't need any friends. Spoon gets really close to him And at this point, his shirt's totally open.
Yeah.
And he says, only the dead are not in need of friends. Spoon opens his shirt all the way and shows his chest, which looks very gross, by the way, like looks very plastic. And then he starts growing boobs.
He starts growing boobs.
He puts his hands up, and suddenly his hands flash a light in front of his face.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because, like, Gailey, when she reveals herself, it is different every single time. And by the end of this movie, you're like, how many powers did she have? Like, it's a lot. Just because I've been kind of watching Greatest American Hero lately, it's kind of like that. It's like every episode you sort of need a new power to do something. It's the same here. It's like she has an infinite pool of powers. It's whatever the plot calls for.
Pretty much, yeah. And this is the first time she gets up really close to Toby and grabs him by the hair. She gets in his face and says, "You're pretty. Very pretty." Call back to the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
And by the way, she didn't say that to Craig, and I just wanted to point that out. I think it's a little continuity error because they probably should have done that, but they didn't do that.
I thought she said it to him after he died and he fell down.
Yeah, after.
I could be wrong. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong, but that's what I thought. But I could be wrong about that.
Something so right can't be so wrong. Anyway, she grips his head off his body and she decapitates him.
No, Zach.
Oh, sorry. And then
you hear a voice come over that says, "Finish him."
She rips his throat open with her hand and decapitates his body. Dun, 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 dun.
It's Sub-Zero's fatality from Mortal Kombat. Like, she rips his head off, and it's great because, like, it's a fake, like, brick wall, and clearly the actor, Toby, the actor, has his head, like, through a hole, but, like, his, like, spinal cord is hanging there, twisting in the wind for, like, a second.
So good.
Yeah. It's so good. So you saw that, right? So that wasn't cut or anything like that from yours.
No,
either.
that wasn't cropped off.
That's great. That's fucking great, dude. Yeah. Every kill in this is a fucking Mortal Kombat fatality, and that's what sells this fucking movie. Seriously.
You know what doesn't sell this movie? The next scene, because it's done and Allison in bed.
I know. I don't care for the relationship. I really don't.
It's kind of frivolous in a way.
Because it doesn't lead it. Because I think by the end of this movie, he's probably like, "Bitch, don't talk to me ever again," you know?
Yeah, she's bad news.
And did you notice that by the side of their bed is the wine that he brought over? Dude, they only drank like a third of it. And even the glasses, like, I get it. Like, I get it as far as like props go and sort of like how it looks on film. But like, they barely drank it, and I was like, you fucking nerds. Like, fucking kill that bottle of wine, for crying out loud.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So...
That's the only note I got for this.
Yeah, no, I mean, so, like, she's asking him if... Oh, sorry. No, Dunn says, you know, what are the cases that you want me to help you with your book? And she smiles and says, oh, now you're interested. Suddenly, his beeper goes off. You remember those guys? Remember pagers back in the day? His pager goes off. She gets up to smoke a cigarette again because she's a compulsive smoker. And he writes, as he gets the call, he takes the address down of where he needs to go. He gets up and leaves, gets ready to leave, gives her a kiss, and he splits. She grabs a pastel marker crayon off her art table and walks over to the notepad and sketches over the notepad and reveals Jackie Treehorn with a heart on. That's your Big Lebowski reference, because you remember in Big Lebowski? Yeah.
I was more disgusted by the fact that you called it a crayon. It's a charcoal. It's what the artists use for. It's what she uses.
It's a pastel crayon. It's a pastel pen. Pastel, whatever. It said
pastel.
Pastel. Don't be ignorant.
Don't be ignorant.
Anyway, she finds out where Clippy's headed to.
Oh, fucking Clippy.
Cut to the scene of the crime. Detective friend is there. We never get his name, poor guy.
Yeah, it's the doopy one. It's the one that's the fat one with the mustache.
Yeah, and Schumann's there, and Schumann says, you got to see this to Dunn. Shows the severed head of Toby. Dunn goes, son of a bitch.
And I love this line. Squiggy says, when he says that, he goes, I don't know a thing about his lineage, but his name is Toby Worth. I was like, I literally didn't pick up on that like the first couple of times.
Me too.
Then I was like, oh, because Dunn said son of a bitch, and like Squiggy's like, no, I don't know who his mom is.
Right.
Like, oh.
So funny. So funny.
That was good.
And then Allison shows up and Dunn's like, what are you doing here? And she goes, you forgot your fortune cookie. And he grabs her and he pulls her into the bar. Dunn says, you didn't see anything back there. And Allison says, come on, Clippy. And he says, you didn't see a goddamn thing. And he tells a nearby officer to take her home. Meanwhile, there's a Confederate flag in the bar. So I'm wondering if your Peekaboo or whatever the fuck it's called back in the day had a Confederate Tattletale.
Yeah, Tattletale probably would have been one of those bars that would have had a Confederate flag.
It's Dukes of Hazzard. It's just a good old boy. No, it's a Confederate flag.
Yeah.
And it was on the show. I had the whatever.
I had the car. I had a toy General Lee with the Confederate flag on it. As a kid, growing up in Virginia and Maryland, I didn't see it too often, but I saw it and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know what it was or, what the connotation was to it. I just thought it was no different than, the Maryland flag or the California flag or, I thought it was like, I think as a kid, I thought it was more of like a state flag kind of thing.
Turns out it's just a racist flag.
It's flat out racist.
So she yells something about, her rights, and Dunn's like, you could tell the officer about your rights on the way home.
You got no rights to be at a crime scene. That's not a right.
She sucks.
She's not a reporter and she's not a fucking cop.
She sucks.
She does. And like, I truly didn't think I was going to come to this review with that mentality because I have such a huge crush on her, but like, it just like not visually seeing her, but just talking about her actions. I'm like, no, she's garbage.
So spoiler to jump ahead really quick. If she was not in this movie, Gailey would have killed all of Danny Emerson's and his 4 therapists, and the movie would have been over. That's it.
Yeah.
And Duncan died. Well, I actually love what Dunn says to her because she is the reason that Duncan dies.
Yeah, no, 100%. And when you think about it, like probably the same ending would have happened. Like, I don't know what she actually
accomplished
contributes to this actual story. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, Albert and Gailey probably wouldn't have died because the cops wouldn't have showed up.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
So she actually is the reason why Albert's dead. Also,
yeah, and Duncan's dead. Yeah, yeah.
And so she murdered 2 people.
Okay. I'm gonna start thinking about this as we go through the breakdown and see if taking her out of the equation would be better for everybody. It just literally would have been because the same people would have died, like bad guy wise, but less good guys would have died.
And Gailey questions her reality, which makes her, sad. So
Allison makes everybody sad in this movie. Except my penis.
Oh, of course. So we cut to Albert's home. Uncle Albert. Do you remember Albert from the beginning of the movie? It's like 30 minutes in. Like 40 minutes in, actually. We now go back to Albert's house.
Yeah, Bruce Davison he's in it, but not like you can tell like how many days he actually shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things.
Yep. He turns a light on in his office, and there's a bunch of monitors in there, and Gailey walks in behind him. She sits down, and she's clearly wearing a wig, and he inspects her and pulls said wig off head, revealing a bald head, much like Don Opper in Android a little bit.
Yeah, but also much like this is going to give me a lot of shades of Cyborg when you see inside the robotic chick's head, which makes sense because the director worked on the effects on Cyborg.
Right. She has microchips in the back of her head.
Yep.
He pulls a section of the head, the back of her head off. And there's like a green glow ball in there with some like antifreeze fluid.
It's really good. Like
it's cool.
The effects are really good. There's a lot of moving parts. But Zach, you know what sells it? I mean, it's all a fake prop head, but what sells it is because it's shot from sort of the side, you can see Gailey like blinking. And I think that's what sells the whole effect process.
Yeah. I mean, look, for a low budget 90s movie, the effects are like, I agree with you. I think they're really good. And it looks like she is bald. It's very convincing.
Yeah, and it's also the director sort of, I mean, it's one of those things where this is where the director having this background in special effects, he also knows how to shoot things properly so that the effects come off better.
Yeah, I agree. He pulls a cord out of the back of her head and then plugs it into the computer. What's funny because nowadays, we would look for like the USB drive, but this is like what you would plug into an amp for a guitar. It's that kind of cord. Yeah. Anyways, he plugs it in the computer and he asks her to recall, and she pulls up a video of killing Toby, and Albert watches like a scientist. She's watching.
I'm upset. I'm upset that you didn't say he asks her to total recall.
Oh, he asks her to total recall. And then he finishes himself off. No, she sees, she's watching Albert as he's watching the death of now Craig as well. There's 2 monitors, right? The camera's cut out and he tells her to replay the videos, and this time in slow motion. And she looks at him concerned because he looks very happy to be watching these videos.
Yeah.
Cut to the boardroom. Norman and Oscar are there. They're talking to each other. Oscar's talking about profits going up and Toby being dead. And Norman goes, "You really think that Danny could do something like that?" So now they think Danny did it, Is that what he's implying?
I think there's like this subplot idea that like they think Danny's doing it, but it doesn't go anywhere because we know, as a viewer, we know that he's not.
Right.
But there, I think the other characters are coming at it like, oh, well, if Danny's bumping these other people off, then our percentage, all of our percentage keeps going up, but eventually it's just going to be Danny at the end is what their fear is.
Right. So Danny does come in the office looking disheveled, and Oscar's like, "What's going on with you, Danny?" And Danny goes, "What do you think's going on with me?" Norman says, "Craig and Toby are dead." And Oscar says, "Not just dead, murdered." Norman says, "Not just murdered." Danny he picks up the phone and he stops dialing. He slams it down and he goes, I know. God damn it. What do you think I live in, a cave? What do you think I live in? A cave? Oscar says, "Who knows? Maybe it's just a madman running around killing people for no reason." Danny says, "Nobody does anything without a reason." Norman tells Danny to ease up. Danny says, Don't you fucking tell me to ease up. I'm the superstar. I'm superstar here. Anyways, Norman says, "All I'm saying is it doesn't help anybody if we lose our heads." And Danny just starts laughing. And he says, "Lose our heads."
I like how that sort of cut the tension. I thought that was funny.
That was really funny, actually. Cut to Allison back with Duncan in her house.
And Duncan totally wants to fuck her.
Yep. And she's showing sketches to Duncan of Danny's buddies and basically saying that the trial was a conspiracy.
Yeah.
She says 5 years down the road, everyone's forgotten about it. Like, really? Because everyone's getting killed who was involved with that. So, and Allison is convinced, and this is a big plot point to the movie, that Danny is the one who's been killing everybody.
Yeah. So at this point, we're supposed to believe that Allison thinks it's Danny, and also Danny's partners think it's Danny. But for us, because we know the truth, it kind of doesn't really play.
No, and Duncan says, "Poor girl. Wish maybe He-Man could help." No,
I know. Anytime you do Duncan's voice, you gotta do fucking Man at Arms.
He goes, "Does she have any family?" Allison says,
"Why is that
only a brother."
Sean Connery? Does she have any family?
Well, Duncan does sound a little bit like Sean Connery if he didn't have that. Yes. So Duncan says, she says that. She says that he's got that Gailey has a brother, and she's going to meet with him today to go over the case records. She needs help to access the case records, and he would be the one to do that. And Duncan says, "I thought you and your policeman were on friendly terms again."
You and Orko?
Orko says, "Well, he was helpful with the book." And Dunn asks if she's, and then Skeletor comes in. No, Dunn asks if she's
This has gone off the rails.
It's been a long day, guys. We'll talk about that in
It's been a long few days. I know.
Yes, we will talk about that later.
Yeah.
Dunn asks if she's going to see her brother. Duncan asks, "Are you going to see the brother now? I'll give you a ride." And she says, "No, thanks. I'm going to get there today, bitch." But seriously, what a jerk.
Yes, I know. She's garbage.
She goes, "But you can take me to lunch."
I know. She's garbage.
Why did I write he smells too?
Maybe he does.
I do talk to text when I take notes. So every now and then I make a mistake. It's just easier than handwriting everything. Because I used to handwrite. Guys, in the early seasons of Podcasting After Dark, Corey and I used to take extensive notes. When I broke down the Warriors, I have that book still. I feel like I want to
You should publish it.
Yeah. It's like...
Well,
60
at this point,
pages.
it's the novelization. You've created the novelization of the Warriors.
I still have those books to this day of the movies I broke down back then. Both of us do. And it's insane. Like, you look at my writing, it looks like the writing of a serial killer. It's just like...
it's like Seven. You're like fucking John Doe from Seven. I've seen it. I've seen his notes. It's madness.
It's madness. So this is a lot easier. But every now and then I make a mistake, and he smells too.
Duncan smells.
Probably. She does. She smells like nicotine, probably.
Oh, God, I love it. I love it. I used to love making out with girls that smoked.
Yeah, but then you get to the point where, you're ready to break up with them, and then that scent is, disgusting, right? Because you just,
No, because I was a smoker, too, so I loved it
all right.
well.
Sure. Okay,
all right, fuck you.
Anyways, cut to Dunn at Emerson Enterprises, and Dunn says he's with Oscar, and he says to Oscar, "You can't think of anyone who would have motive to kill Craig or Toby?" Oscar says, "I don't think so." Oscar offers Dunn a drink, and Dunn says, "No, thanks." And Dunn says, "Were there any business rivals?" Someone like that. And Oscar dismisses it, doesn't even answer him. He goes, "They're both great guys, both of them. We used to call us the Five Musketeers."
I love how that comes back.
And
He's
Dunn
still trying to sell it. He says they used to call us the Five Musketeers. He's still trying to push that.
And then Dunn says, "Well, guess you're the Three Musketeers now."
And Oscar's like, "Oh, I like
good.
that."
Yeah.
He's such a dumbass.
There's a knock at the door. In walks Miss, what's her,
Fairweather. Yeah, Faraday. It doesn't matter.
Anyways.
Her outfit is wild, by the way. It is wild.
The dress is awesome 80s, by the way.
Yeah, it's pure 80s apocalypse.
She asks if Toby's going to be taking the same place where Craig is buried because they're taking up another collection, but they don't have the same amount of money to take care of, to get the same size bouquet. They got Craig. And Oscar says, "Come back to my office later, and I'll personally take care of the difference." She leaves, and he glances at her. And Dunn says he's done questioning Oscar for the moment, but he warns him to be careful and watch himself. Don't stand next to open windows. And he goes, "If you do, make sure you know who's standing behind you." Sure.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Cut to Duncan at Albert's home. Cut to Man-at-Arms outside of Albert's home. And Allison is inside the home, looking at a painting of Gailey on the wall.
And the painting is so clearly made by the same artist that did all the courtroom sketches, meaning, it's essentially Allison made that painting right there.
Right. Albert walks in and she says, "You remember me from the trial?" And Albert says, "Yes, the drawings." And Allison says, "It was my job." Albert says, "We all have our jobs." She asks him if he's seen the news lately. I don't know why it was funny to me, but she asked him if he's seen the news lately. And he goes, "Yes, I have." And she said, "So you know that Emerson's witnesses have been murdered?" And Albert says, "I'm aware of that fact." She asks how he feels about that. And he goes, "I haven't felt anything in a very long time." Allison says, I think I know who did it. And I'm certain there's more to come." And Albert says, "I think you've gotten more than enough mileage out of my sister, so leave it alone." Allison says, "It was Emerson. He's cleaning house by getting rid of his friends." Albert smiled and says, "What are you looking for? A more lucrative offer here? Maybe a movie, perhaps?" And Allison says, "I want to know what happened." Albert says, "Leave it alone, Miss Ruger. Leave my sister's memory alone." Meanwhile, Gailey's on the top floor of Albert's house, looking out the window at Duncan. As Allison comes out of the house smoking a cigarette again, she says to Duncan she wants to talk to the ones that are left. She wants to talk to them in the order that they testified. For some weird reason. Anyways, that would be Oscar next.
Did you recognize that house at all, dude? Like, I looked up like all the movies that like we've sort of like. I was like, is it the Waxwork house? It's not.
Witchboard?
It's not. I looked up the Witchboard house. It's not. But and it's not the people under the stairs house either. But like, I swear to fucking God, it's a house that we've seen in a movie though.
It's like it looks like a house in Pasadena or something like that.
Yeah. And how do they not see Gailey sitting up there looking at? Because also too, like when I paused it to look at the house, I also looked in the top windows and Gailey's not up there, but
of
she
course
is. But like, how could you not have seen her, up there?
Because Duncan was smoking crack in the backseat of his car.
He was jerking off to Allison is what he was doing.
And Alf was sitting there eating a cat.
Alf! Gordon Shumway.
Alf, I want to smoke some crack with you.
What is his name? Wright? What is it? Bernie Wright or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Poor guy, poor bastard. He was on the cover of National Enquirer, and they're like, star of Dad from Alf seen smoking crack, having sex with Vietnamese prostitute. Male Vietnamese prostitute. I'm like, poor guy.
Poor
They even
bastard.
write, they're like, he smoked crack out of a Pepsi can. I'm like, oh my God, it's so messed up. Anyways, you could go back in the archives of National Enquirer. That was also where Burt Reynolds they paid him enough money to pull his wig off and do a photo shoot with bald.
Yeah.
I have that somewhere. I got to look for it. I think I do. I wish I did, if I don't. Anyways, Allison wants to go to Emerson's office. It's across from Capitol Records, like you said earlier, and that's where Duncan's like, there's not a decent restaurant for 2 miles in either direction. Not a decent restaurant. Anyways.
Where will Orko and I eat lunch?
Albert walks up to Gailey and at the window, takes her hand, and they walk away.
Did you pick up on like possible, like, I feel like if this movie was sleazier, they would have dived into some sort of incesty thing, but
he's just broken.
No, shut it down. But a lesser movie would have gone that route.
I think so.
Didn't it sort of go that route?
No.
Didn't it sort of go that route in Death Spa or something like that? Like,
didn't they?
I feel like it's
God, I love Death Spa so much.
I know.
You're Beta. I'm VHS. It's like so great. Oh my God. Go back in the archives. Go back in our archives and watch that. And then go listen to that and listen to our interview with Chelsea Field that we did the crossover episode with.
Yeah.
Because we talk about Death Spa with her. Anyways.
Yeah, we sure do.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Dunn's at his desk talking to Schumann. This is when Schumann has his moment. It's his final scene in the movie, and it's the best scene that he has.
It is, and he's so very excited about the kills. They're Baroque, which I don't know what that means, by the way.
I don't know it. It's style of painting.
Do the scene, and I'll see if I can look it up and figure it out.
So, Dunn is looking at the case file, and he's asking if anything will make his job any easier. Schumann's like, not a thing. In a nutshell, Toby was strangled and decapitated at the same time. And Dunn's like, that's not possible. And Schumann's like, yes, it is. Schumann says, it is possible. If what you're strangled with is hot enough to burn a hole through your skin and your muscle and your cartilage. And he gets like so amped up. He's like, it's Baroque.
It's Baroque. He gets so excited about it because he's talking about the art style Baroque, which I kind of didn't really know what it meant. I've heard it before, but basically some of the qualities the most frequently associated with the Baroque art style are grandeur, sensuous richness, drama, dynamism. So it's basically dynamic. It's just a very dynamic art style. And I love like how excited he gets. And then there's like this pause where Dunn is like, are you done now? And, Squiggy's kind of like, okay, I'm done. And then there's like this pause and he's like, Baroque? Really? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Use that to describe this kill. This is honestly, it's the best, scene with Squiggy in it, but it works because of what David Naughton's sort of reaction is, because as the doctor, the coroner's getting all excited about it, David Naughton, like Dunn is just sitting there like with his mouth covered, like waiting for the guy to be done, like sort of like, are you done now? But then at the end of it, he's like, Baroque? Really?
Yeah, it's hilarious. And I'm pretty sure too, not only in the scene is that funny, but this is when the there do not smoke or no smoking sign is on his desk.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was on there earlier when Allison was smoking.
He put it there afterwards.
So it's like a fuck you to her. That's really funny.
Yes, because she's trash.
It's really funny.
She's hot trash.
Well, cut to another hot trash where Miss Faraday or Farweather or whatever the hell her name is.
Fairweather.
is with Oscar, and he's writing a check to her, and he's writing a check for $500. And she goes, that's going to buy a whole lot of flowers. And Oscar says, well, you don't have to spend this on flowers. You worked really hard on this collection. You can spend this on yourself. She goes, I can't accept this. And he's looking at under her blouse, and she goes, this is meant to help people. And he's reading her face. And as she starts speaking, he goes, can I fix you a drink? And she goes, it's not 5 o'clock yet. He goes, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, baby.
And she goes,
he's
maybe
so
I'll...
like gleefully sleazy too.
So yeah. And like, is he attractive? No.
No, not at all.
She goes, maybe I'll do one later. Phone rings, and it's the secretary saying that Allison is there at the office to talk to him. And he goes, I never heard of her. He tells his secretary to get rid of her. Cut to Allison and Duncan talking to the secretary. Secretary says, I'm afraid Oscar's in a conference, but if you give me your name, blah, blah, blah. She says, thank you. By the way, she has a ridiculous dog jacket on. It's a denim jacket with dogs on it.
Dude, no, it's not denim. It's like a sweater. It's like a green sweater. I paused it and looked at this. It's like a green sweater with all these faces of dogs on it. It is the ugliest, most god-awful thing. I think it's so very much of the time.
Is it, though?
It's not timeless. I'll tell you that.
You know what it looks like? You know that painting of dogs playing poker? It's like those kind of dogs.
Yeah. No, it's fucking terrible. It's fucking... Somebody made this. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah, someone made that.
Yeah. So, real quick, Zach, I finally wrote down Miss Fairweather. She's played by Brenda Swanson. She has 6 credits on IMDb. One of which is that Flash TV series. Remember that one back in the day? And do you remember this movie from 1992 called Prototype, where there's this robot guy on the cover? If you saw the cover, you'd be like, "Oh my fucking god, I remember that." From
Is it a full moon movie?
I believe that it is.
I believe I have a poster of that in the full moon calendar from back in the day. Oh, no, I don't. I'm looking at a prototype. Yeah, the poster is so bad.
Yeah, dude. Do you remember this with this robotic soldier looking guy on the cover with a gun or whatever?
Yeah,
I do. I never saw it, but I remember that VHS cover burned into my brain.
You know who plays Prototype? But Michael J. White.
Oh, no shit.
Spawn.
No shit.
Yep. Black Dynamite.
Yeah. No,
Anyways,
Black Dynamite fucking rules, by the way.
Yeah, he's a badass in real life too, by the way.
I fucking love that dude.
So this is a little bit of a lame continuity scene. So Allison asks Duncan to kind of cover for her. And, Duncan says, tell me who cut your hair, to the receptionist, as she tries to barge into what I think she thinks is Oscar's office, but it happens to be the security office door.
She's right behind Duncan, and I like the moment she goes for the handle, the secretary's like, hey, what are you doing? Because she's right there. It's
yes.
It's not like she kind of slinked away down the hall. She went to the door that is literally 2 feet from the secretary. And
right.
Duncan is not that good looking that the secretary would be completely into him,
Exactly. We cut back to Oscar making the moves on Fairweather or whatever. Yeah. She asks if they can go someplace else so they won't get interrupted. And he says, what do you have in mind? Cut back to Allison and Duncan walking out of the office, and they're in the parking garage part of the building, the bottom.
Yeah.
And Allison says, I'm not finished here yet. I've got to get around that receptionist. There's got to be a freight elevator around here. And Duncan says, I'm not going to ride in a freight elevator, He-Man. And she says, stay here and I'll be right back. Okay? While you die, Duncan. Cut to Faraday. Oh, poor Duncan. Or Fairweather or Fair Lady. Bringing Oscar into another office. This is something about the guy.
It's like a break room.
break room, yeah. And she says, she goes, no one's ever in here after lunch. Oscar says, you're way too smart to be just a girl from the pool. And she says, I was thinking the same thing. And she gets on top of him, on top of the office table. They start making out, and you can fill in the blanks.
These are the only boobs that you see in the movie.
Yep. And I think at this point they are having sex.
Yeah,
anyways,
I think so. Like,
Allison finds an elevator, and Duncan waits for her. Cut back to Oscar and Faraday making out by the vending machine now. Cut back to Allison. This goes back and forth. Cut back to Allison in the office searching for the whereabouts of Oscar. She walks straight by the secretary. She picks up some files to discreetly act like she's hidden. Cut back to Oscar and Faraday. She like moves her hair around so he can't see her face. And then suddenly for a split second, it flashes to Gailey.
Well, it's permanent. Like it's another, every single time that she reveals her face, it's a different way. So it's like she looks down, the hair covers her, and then she looks back up and she's Gailey. And so like the first time she had to rip off the face, the second time with FBI agent Soap, she blew her face off with lasers, and
right.
This one it just morphs. I kind of wish we just had this one moment, like one piece of dialogue that says, like her brother saying, like, I'm going to give you like an upgrade to your something, you know what I mean? Like your optics. I don't know, whatever. But it's weird that it's literally different every single time.
Yeah. Is that a continuity issue? I don't know, but it's cool to see like different things. It doesn't bother me that it's different every time.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, for the rest of this scene, as she fucks him to death, it's Gailey. You see her as Gailey.
And as Gailey, she says, you know, he looks shocked. She looks angry, and she pushes him to the ground. And she says, I want something I can remember you by, something precious. And she's riding him now the whole time.
He's into it, right? Even though he knows who she is. But
yeah.
he's like, oh yeah, let's do this, you know?
Right. Sure.
Sure.
Cut back to Allison getting into Oscar's office, and they're not there. Cut back to Gailey on top of Oscar saying, all you did was watch. And then she grabs a hold of him, and he looks shocked. And then she says, very, very pretty. And then you hear a grinding sound, and
like
Oscar gets his dick cut off from her vagina.
Well, it's almost like, because you're going to see him later, it's like his life force. It's like the movie Life Force, like everything is sucked out of him. So like you hear it, the grind, he's like, raw, you know, and then, but you hear like a slurping sound, right? Like she's sucking him up inside. And then it does another, the editing actually is really good in this movie, because then it cuts to Duncan back down in the garage sucking on his big gulp.
Which is like the tiniest big gulp I've ever seen, by the way.
It is. It's a tiny gulp. It's a tiny gulp. But it's the same sound, you know, it's like that sucking sound. But then did you notice that like he's done with the big gulp, he like looks at the cup and he just throws it on the ground. Like he just like there's no trash nearby. He just throws it on the ground, and I'm like, that was the 80s. Like that was why we had to like have PSAs about littering, because we didn't give a shit back then. We just like threw it on the ground and not cared. And somewhere a Native American man cries looking down the road.
I'm not gonna lie, in 2025, I was driving downtown LA. Guy in front of me at the stoplight opens his car door, throws a bunch of trash on the ground, drives off.
Who does that? Who does that in this day and age, you know? Assholes.
Exactly. Yeah. Cut back to Allison, and Fairweather walks right past her in the office building after she leaves the break room. As she does, she pulls off her wig, revealing her blonde hair, and she stops and she turns and she looks back at Allison, who gets spotted by the secretary. The secretary calls for security. Allison tries to run out, runs past Gailey, who grids her, you know.
Computer screen. Records her face or whatever, yeah.
Right. Allison backs up into an office door, but it's actually the door of the break room where Oscar's dead. She closes the door and hides. Cut back to Duncan. Suddenly in the garage, Gailey's down there. Duncan sees her, and he says, I'm not in the habit of accosting young women in garages. But she asks if there's something she can do for him. And he goes, oh, my mistake. I thought you were someone else. And she turns to walk away, and then he says, Gailey. And suddenly she stops and she turns around and looks at Duncan.
Yeah, I like that look because she like slowly turns to look at him.
Right. And so like he says that just to see what her response would be. Cut back to Allison in the office, and she turns around in the break room and sees legs on the ground. She walks towards them and sees Oscar's dead body with blood coming out of where his penis should be. And his life looks like it's been sucked out of him by an alien vampire.
Yeah, he's got like a sunken face. It's like it's all, prosthetics or whatever, but it's elaborate. So they want you to understand that she sucked like everything out of his groin area.
Allison runs runs to the service elevator, doesn't tell anyone that he's been murdered. She gets down to the garage, so now she's going to be suspected as a suspect, right? Because they'll find the dead body. There's no one knows about Fairweather or whatever the hell her name was. And when she gets down to the garage, she sees a bunch of people surrounding something. She walks over to what they're looking at, and it's Duncan's dead body on the ground. His neck's been broken. She screams, and two guys hold her back, looking like they're going to accost her.
It's a shame, too. Like, I mean, it's
so
the only
she
kill
killed him.
Yeah, she did. She killed him by bringing him there. It's the only kill we don't really see happen, Yeah,
I don't think we see him get killed because I think that we're supposed to have more sympathy for him that way.
Right, exactly. You're 100% correct. Yeah.
Like it's not supposed to exploit him, right?
Yeah.
Cut to Albert in his computer lab office. Gailey shows up with her bald head, watching everyone get killed. 3 dudes now, Craig, Toby, and now Oscar.
But notice that he doesn't ever see Duncan on the screen. And I kind of wish they would have used this moment for him to be like, you shouldn't have killed him, type of thing.
I think this is a continuity flaw.
Yeah, I mean, like a little bit, but like, yeah, or it's just timing and it's like, whatever, but I wish there was a little bit of something there by her brother or you see later that he's kind of controlling her. Maybe he initiated the kill. Like he was like, you got to kill him because he knows who you are.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, cause later on in the movie, he's going to be like basically controlling her. He'll be in a van like, David Strathairn was in Sneakers, letting everyone hit the control room of the van.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. Yeah. Anyways, because Albert spots on the video Allison from Gailey's feed and he gets upset and he pauses the screen on her. But yeah, no mention of Duncan. Duncan's done.
Fuck. Yeah. Duncan's
no more
done.
Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms is dead.
Yeah.
Cut to John now. Boy toy Clippy is at Allison's apartment and she's looking all disheveled and she's trying to light a cigarette to smoke and he lights it for her because she can't light it herself. And she's like, it was Emerson. It was Emerson.
And did you notice like her cigarette in the scene? It's like, it's as long as Sigourney Weaver's is in Aliens, but not quite as long as Shelley Duvall's in The Shining. Like the burn, the ash,
Oh yeah, totally. Dunn's like, what about the secretary and Duncan? She goes, wrong place, wrong time. Dunn says, I can't go for that. And Allison says, I came back here and looked at the drawings. I've seen them. I've seen them. And she goes, I looked at the one of Daniel. I've drawn them. Dunn says, leave it alone. Walk away from something for the first time in your life before you get hurt.
And I like how she's like, no, and I'm just like, you stupid, god damn it.
And Dunn says, if it's Emerson, we'll get him. She says, it is Emerson. He's responsible for killing Duncan. Dunn says, Duncan died because he was trying to help you. You're responsible for him getting in harm's way. Nobody else.
Yep.
And if you left him alone, he'd be alive tonight. But you didn't, and he's dead now. So stop it before it kills you. And she starts crying like a crazy person. But in about 5 minutes, they're going to have sex.
I mean, I would.
Crazy. Cut to Albert eating a TV dinner with a glass of wine and looking concerned while Gailey plays the piano rather well, actually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, she's a pianist, so,
Yep. But So camera fades on a painting of her. I've kind of forgot that by this point in the movie. I'm like, oh, yeah, she's a pianist.
I know.
It's like her job. She's looking at a painting of herself, smiling. She tries to smile, but she can't. Albert walks in front of the painting and looks down at her playing piano. She stops playing. Albert says, that was beautiful. She says, it wasn't right. Albert says, nothing missing as far as I can tell. She shakes her head and says, I can't find it, but I can feel it. Albert says, why don't you stop dedicating any more energy to your feelings? He says, your performance is perfect. Kaylee says, perhaps that is what is wrong with it.
Yeah, I like that. It's because it's perfect, and it shouldn't be. If it's a human doing it, it shouldn't be perfect.
Right. Albert gets up and walks away, and as he does, she says, that woman I saw today was at the house. Albert says, she was no one. Kaylee says, why did her coming here upset you? And Albert says, why do you think I was upset? And Kaylee says, I watched your face.
And by the way, when she says, I watched your face, she made this like facial, this hand expression that, according to the director, this is the scene that she had to audition, right? This was the scene that she auditioned for. And her making that hand gesture across her face, like that got her the gig of this entire, like that got her this role right here. Yeah.
Interesting.
Because the director was like, so why did you do that? And she was like, well, the character's a pianist. I figured she was like, she's going to do things with her hand or whatever. But the director like really liked that motion when she was like, I saw your face.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this scene is really good, and it's very important.
One of the best. It's like one of the most heartfelt scenes in the movie.
Yeah, because Albert says, you're asking a lot of questions. And Kaylee says, that's how I learn.
Mm-hmm.
And Albert finally says, well, she's from the past. She was at the trial. And Kaylee says, was she my friend? And Albert says, no. And then Kaylee says, did I have any friends at all? Then that's when the scene ends.
Dude, so when they were talking to the editor on that little hour-long documentary on the behind the scenes of this, he literally choked up at the scene because he was like, this is my favorite line in the movie. The fact that like she asks, like, did I have any friends? Like the editor literally, they had to cut because he started like crying a little bit. He was like, this was so emotional. And I was like, you didn't have any friends, did you? I think.
Yeah. My sympathy goes out to all those people that felt that way back in the day or still feel that way.
But I mean, as far as like, emotional scenes and everything, like this is probably one of the best scenes in the movie.
I agree. I totally agree.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits two challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV, and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.
And now, back to the show.
After that scene ends, you cut back to the boardroom. Norman's pouring a drink, looking very nervous and upset. He drops the bottle when Danny walks in. When Danny is sitting alone in the dark, surprising him. Norman says, Jesus, you scared me. And Danny very calmly says, pick up the bottle. Norman goes, you and me, we're next. Danny says, shut up and let me think. Do 500 push-ups. And Norman goes, yeah, you better think. You're always the one with the bright ideas. How about something brilliant now, huh? Danny says, I told you to shut up. And Norman says, great, really constructive. Look, you can stay up here if you want, thinking, but I made up my mind. I'm getting out. I'm getting out of the country, out of the town, away from you. And Danny says, you think it's me, don't you? Norman says, I don't know what I think. I know it's just gotten really unhealthy to hang around with you. Danny says, you're not leaving the country. You're not going anywhere. And Norman's like, who says? And Danny says, I do. All this stuff has upset you. I can't have you going out there in this condition, talking to people. You find that a whole lot more unhealthy than hanging around me. I don't have anything to do with Craig. I didn't have anything to do with Craig, Toby, or Oscar. And Norman's like, I don't believe you. And Danny says, it doesn't make any difference whether you believe it or not. What you better believe is, if you try to walk out on me, if you try to go out to the feds or the DA or your grandmother, I will kill you. Now, go back to work. Norman leaves as Daniel just watches him.
And I have it in my notes. This is the scene where I was like, okay, like I think they picked the right person for the villain, because like the whole time I was like, I wish John J. York was the villain or whatever. But like this scene right here, and then moving forward from here, I was like, no, they picked the right guy for the villain.
Yeah. Yep. They picked the right guy to have his shirt off, because the next scene, it's done with his shirt off in bed. Allison's gone, but she left him a teddy bear.
And she left him a note signed to Clippy.
Oh, and says, "I've gone to see Norman. Don't be mad. See ya." He just says, "Son of a bitch." Cut to what I thought was the Santa Monica airport. There's like an office building area by a helicopter.
I was kind of assuming it was the Burbank airport, but yeah, whatever. It could be either or.
Hey, you could come see, come saw, whatever you want. Saab pulls up. Remember Saabs? Remember when Saabs were a big deal? What happened to Saabs? They still have Saabs?
I think they still exist, but they're not the yuppie big deal car they were back in the 80s and early 90s.
They had the thing where you put the key like in the middle where the shifter was.
Yes.
My buddy had a Saab.
I never rode in one, no.
My friend had a Saab, and I was like, this is cool. And then it drove like shit.
It's not, there weren't a car where the engine was in the back, was it? No.
No, but they were like
still
really
in the front.
fast. Yeah, still in the front.
Okay.
There was party in the front and business in the back. Yeah, Norman gets out. He yells, there's a helicopter there with a pilot getting ready to go. He says, "I'll just be a minute." He runs into the office. Cut to Allison looking at an old school map. Oh my God, the old school maps back in the day. Trying to find Norman's whereabouts. And remember that, everybody? The maps that we used to use? By the way, I use those now for wrapping presents, old maps. She pulls into, I'm going to call it Santa Monica Airport. And you cut back to Norman grabbing things from his office cabinet, filling up his stuff, and Allison walks in. Allison says, "I'm glad I caught you." Norman turns around nervously. Norman asks who she is, and she introduces herself. She says, "I have a proposition for you." "Something's got you worried, Norman." And he tells her to get out. He's got work to do. Norman says, "Like you said." And she says, "Too busy to save his own life." He stops rummaging through files, turns around, looks at her, and says, "You said you had a proposition?" She basically convinces Norman to tell the police about Danny and what happened 5 years ago. She says, "My car's outside. In 20 minutes, you're telling the police what you know about Danny Emerson." Just as she says this, Daniel appears in the doorway.
Daniel!
And then Danny says to Norman, he says, "Isn't this something you should be doing outside?" Norman leaves nervously. Danny turns his attention to Allison and he says, "District Attorney? Department of Justice? FBI? SEC? League of Women Voters?
Courtroom painter?
Courtroom whore? Well, it doesn't matter. You can't touch me. No one can." She pushes past him, running after Norman. Danny pauses like by the bookshelf that's nearby, and he shoves all the books off the bookshelf.
But that's not his office. That's some poor bastard's gonna come in and be like, "What the fuck?"
It's Norman's office at like the airport.
Norman? That's Norman's office?
Yeah, because he's like cleaning up. He's like getting his things.
Yeah, you're right. I never put that together. I didn't. Yeah, you're right.
Because it's not at the Capitol building.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Cut to Norman. Here we go. This is it. We cut to Norman exiting the office, getting closer to the helicopter. Suddenly, there's a man that shows up and tells Norman he works for Mr. Emerson and he's there to stop him. Norman tries to get past him. Suddenly, you see Gailey walking around the helicopter with sunglasses on, looking very cool.
Yeah.
And she comes towards Norman and the other guy, the bodyguard or whatever. Hands come out of nowhere, grabs the guy from behind and just throws him to the side, pretty much knocking him out. And it's Gailey. Norman says, "Who are you?" She takes her sunglasses off and his eyes get really big. She puts her arms around him. Norman screams and he goes, "It was Danny. I swear. I didn't do anything. It was all Danny's idea. I don't even remember." And Gailey goes, "You don't even remember?" And she lifts him up high into the blades of the helicopter. And as she does, there's a quick cut of the head getting chopped off. A la like out of Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead, the original Dawn of the Dead. Yep, when
Right?
the zombie stands up. Yep.
Best kill in my opinion.
Yep,
She looks
yep.
down at the dead body and she says, "Pretty, very pretty," and her face is covered in blood.
Yeah, and the effect was great, dude. Like the kill effect was fantastic. Like
It's shocking
man.
to see Rat from Fast Times at Ridgemont High get his head cut off.
Yeah.
You see
And
it
so
from
you said-
behind.
and so you said this is the GIF that you found online when you were like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, because I was like looking up movies of the
Brian
actor, Brian Backer, and you know, trying to pull up collages for all the movies he's been in, the 8 movies he's been in,
Yeah.
and I think there's like that's when you could do 10 pictures on Instagram, and I remember pulling up that GIF. I'm like, oh, I got to use this. This is great. And then people were like, "What's this from?" And then they'd steal it.
Yeah, of course.
Whatever. I didn't make the movie, so who cares? Anyways, Allison walks out of the office as well, and she sees everybody rushing toward the helicopter. Again, she sees everybody rushing to some sort of scene of a crime. She has no idea what's going on. She runs over, sees Gailey wiping blood off her face. Gailey does another scan of Allison's face, and Allison says, "Gailey?" They look at each other by the helicopter. Cut to Albert, who's now watching everything from a monitor and a headset in the van, and he says, tells her to return to base. Gailey blinks and then kind of blinks once, and then she walks past Allison. And by the way, she was wearing this really sweet silver jacket, and she like dumps the jacket, and now she's wearing like a flight jumpsuit.
Yep.
And she walks into the office where Danny is, because he looks out the window and sees that Norman's gotten killed, but it's too far away. You know, he doesn't see exactly like who did it, but he runs off.
Yeah.
Allison runs back into the building. She sees someone going up a staircase to the roof of the warehouse building they're in.
/ hangar, sort of. It's not really a hangar, but I think it's supposed to be, you know.
Right. And she follows after. And when she gets up to the top of the stairs, she's outside like on a railing that like the top part of the stairs that leads up to the roof. Gailey comes out of nowhere, and Allison gets knocked over and falls over the railings and is now holding onto the railings. There's like 2 rungs of railing. She's holding onto the first one. She slips and falls into the second one. She goes to slip again, and Gailey grabs her and picks her up by like her neck. Right?
Yeah. And like Allison's holding on to her wrists, but I'm like, my God, like, can you pick someone up by their fucking neck, you know?
Well, she probably should have just finished the job. Albert
Yeah.
tells her to let her fall, which she probably should have done. But then at this point now, it's like, ooh, it's a second murder of someone who's quote unquote innocent.
Yeah. And Gailey, there's this idea that Gailey like knows her sort of thing.
Yeah, because Gailey, she's gonna drop Allison, and Allison yells out her name, and Gailey says, "You know me?" And Allison asks her to help her up, and meanwhile Albert's saying into her earpiece, into his earpiece, drop her. Cut to the crime scene, and Dunn shows up asking where Allison is. The other detective says there's no sign of her, but her car is there. Dunn says he wants to talk to Emerson. The detective says Emerson says to call his lawyer. Dunn says, "I want to talk to Emerson, but I'm not going to talk to his lawyer." Like, oh, okay. He asks where the hell Allison is, and the scene cuts.
Did you notice like the fucking like 5 packs of like Marlboros on the top of Allison's like the dashboard of her car, you know, of her little Honda CRV or wherever the fuck that little hatchback car was, you know, back in the day?
I didn't notice that, but it would have been really funny if her car was like full of just junk.
She looks like she has a garbage car. Like she's a garbage person.
You cut to garbage person duct taped to a bar in the van of Albert's van. Gailey's in there taking her jumpsuit off. Gailey says, "You did know me, didn't you?" And Allison says, "During the trial." And Gailey says, "What was I like? Was I happy?" And Allison says, "I drew your picture for television, but we never spoke." Suddenly, the van parks in front of Emerson's office. Cut to Emerson sitting at his desk drinking.
Oh, this is another great scene with Emerson.
Yeah, so Emerson's sitting at his desk in the famous boardroom.
It's the best set in the entire fucking movie. I get why they use it multiple times.
I agree with you. I also think this movie does a good job of utilizing minimal sets.
Yeah.
And not making you feel like they keep shooting at the same place. Like it doesn't feel
natural.
low budge.
Well, yeah, like it feels natural that they're in this boardroom multiple times. It feels because like we've all worked those jobs where like you kind of some of these jobs, people who like sort of live in the boardroom or whatever. Like I get it. It doesn't feel like, oh, we got a cool set, let's just keep using it. No, it's the boardroom. It's where they're gonna meet.
Right. Exactly. Quick cut to Emerson at his desk. He has a briefcase on his desk and he pulls out a gun. Cut back to Allison tied up in the van. Albert's checking the monitors while Gailey's looking at him. Albert turns to Allison and says, "Now what possible interest would you have in the deaths of these men?" And Allison says, "I'm as happy to see them dead as you are. I watched them at the trial. I saw what their lies did to Gailey." And Albert says, "And now you know the pain of her getting her revenge." Allison says, "Don't blame this on a dead girl. Your sister couldn't kill anybody." Albert says, "She was dead. They were alive, and it simply wasn't fair." Cut back to Danny, who now has a shotgun, and he pumps it. He looks at the photo of the 3 therapists. Musketeers. And he puts the shotgun on the table next to the gun. Goes back to drinking and says, "To friendship, the ties that bind." Cut back to Albert getting in Gailey's face and says, "Last one. You go to him as you are, and he'll know who you are. And it'll all be over." And Gailey says, "What will become of me?" Albert says, "I'll write your new program." And Gailey says, "Then more killing?" And Albert says, "No. After tonight, there will be no more." And then Gailey says, "I'm glad." And then that's when Albert puts his head down by his heart, and you think that he wants to secretly have sex with his sister.
Wants to suckle on her bosoms.
Yes. This scene slowly fades, and you fade in on Danny asleep at his table. And he wakes up from a cold sweat nightmare to an empty room. And he starts talking to himself. He's like, "All right, we got a lot to accomplish. We got a lot to accomplish today. So I think we should just jump in. Any new business? No? Okay. Any old business?" And then suddenly you hear Gailey's voice saying, "Mr. Chairman, I have something that I would like to put on the table." Danny looks up and he sees Gailey. He freaks out. Gailey says, "You're so much smaller than I thought you would be." Danny goes, "What?" Gailey says, "I thought you'd be terrible, a monster, but you're so small, so weak." And Danny says, "I don't have to take any of this shit from a ghost." He takes a shotgun, pumps it 3 times in her stomach.
Yeah, that was cool.
You can see the wires inside her stomach exposed.
It kind of reminds me of the effects of Pam Grier in Class of 1999.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, it kind of looks sort of like that a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. She gets up and then comes after him. He runs out of the office and he takes his handgun now because I guess he doesn't have any more bullets for his shotgun.
Yeah, I think so.
He tries to go to the elevator, but it's been sabotaged. And the stairway's also blocked, so he can't go down.
You can tell that like Gailey made all these things so he would have to essentially go to the roof, which I like. They didn't have to add that. I would have bought it if he ran to the roof and she just followed him there. But like she set up all these things that like force him to go to the roof.
Which is cool. I buy that too.
Yep.
So he has to go up to the roof. Meanwhile, cut back to Allison, who is getting free from the duct tape around her wrists.
Because they kind of like duct taped her against like a sort of a sharp sort of like pole thing in the van, and so she's like easily like, oh, okay, I can just rip through this easily.
She's used to ripping through things easily.
Men's hearts.
And there just happens to be a wrench right next to her. She takes the wrench.
A giant one.
And she hits Albert over the head.
That would kill him.
Right. When Albert's unconscious, Gailey switches to automatic pilot. Like the android part of her, right? Allison checks the monitors and sees that they're going to the roof. Cops rush in after everyone. Allison eventually reaches the roof and looks around, looking for Gailey. Danny grabs Allison from behind and points the gun to her head, holding her hostage. And then he yells at Allison. He goes, "You in this with her? Is that the deal?" And Allison says, "Don't you know her? Don't you remember?" And Danny goes, I didn't have anything to do with that. I'm innocent. You just ask him. Allison says, ask who? There's nobody left.
They're all dead. And the whole time, by the way, Capitol Records building is right in the background, and I'm like, where's Ford?
And Ford's going, my hair.
It's all messed up.
My Zuzu.
Zuzu.
Suddenly, Gailey walks up and says, stop. And Danny says, get away from me. And Gailey says, let go of my friend. Danny says, not a chance. Albert's on the roof. And Gailey asks Albert, what do I do? Albert, who's like no longer, no effects from getting hit over the head with a wrench.
He's no longer concussed.
Yes. And Albert says, kill them both. And Gailey says, I don't want to. It doesn't feel. And Albert says, access override. And Gailey says, don't make me. Albert says, persona override, 1492 Lazarus. And suddenly a laser beam shoots out of Gailey's finger and it shoots Daniel's hand. It's such a laser beam like that's used for cats. Yeah. And he screams in pain, ah! And he drops the gun and Allison breaks free. And then Gailey says, pretty, very pretty. Suddenly the laser sets him on fire.
Yeah, it's like a lightning bolt at this point. Like she shoots a lightning out of her finger. But I like that even though she was overridden, she chose to she burns his hand so he would let go of Allison, because there's I like that they're underneath it all, the ghost in the machine type of thing still, it wants to do the right thing, so it doesn't want to kill the innocent person, which is sad again why Duncan died, but yeah. And then I like the electricity shot, and then Danny ignites into flames. It is a great special effects burn.
Yeah, it's way better than Devil Times 5's torch scene.
It's way better than let's bring it back to Streets of Fire. Nope. Streets. Savage Streets. Remember the end of that where they burn the main antagonist. Yeah. But remember, it was so bad that you could see the mask on his face and everything like that.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
This is infinitely better than that.
Infinitely better than Halloween 2 when... No, I'm kidding.
Michael Myers.
Anyways, after that, so Danny falls off the roof and dies, right?
Yeah, he plummets to his death. And by the way, real quick, this is Scorpion's fatality. I'm telling you, every fatality is a Mortal Kombat fatality. Finish him.
We didn't do it for Oscar.
I know,
Let's roll it all the way back and we'll do it all over again.
Roll it back.
Allison sees the gun on the ground and goes to grab it. Albert picks it up first and says, it's all over. Suddenly, cops come out of nowhere.
Yeah, Dunn and all of them, they just appear on the roof.
And Dunn shoots Albert in the shoulder and knocks him down. Gailey looks on and goes to check on her brother. Allison runs over to Dunn. Cut back to Albert and Gailey, and Albert says, we have to go to the safe place. And then Gailey says, there's only one safe place. And they look at each other, and Albert smiles. They walk toward the edge of the building. Allison goes to try to stop them, and Dunn pulls her back from trying to save them.
He's like, no,
let it go.
Let this happen. Let it happen.
And they both jump off the building and die.
Dude, and the final shot in the entire movie is a POV shot. They threw a camera over the ledge. Apparently they used it's a gun camera that goes on the front of fighter jets or something. And they threw it over. They did I think they did 3 takes of it. And this is the one they used where it kind of turns to the left a little bit. And that's the one that they used. But dude, I know what they're doing. I know that they just threw a camera over the edge of a building, but we don't see movies do that too often. And on a low budget film, the fact that they are willing to just destroy 3 cameras like that, but
that's
it's great.
Amazing.
And I love that this is it. There's no cut back to Allison and Dunn. There's no denouement at all. It's once the camera hits the ground and there's that little bit of static that I think was probably naturally inside of the camera, it just goes to credits.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else of the story. There's no reason to follow the story anymore. We don't know what happens with Allison and Clippy or anything like that.
We don't care.
I love it. We don't care.
We don't care about them.
No. So I loved it, man. I love this ending. I love how it ended. I love the themes that it was playing with, like from beginning to end. Like I fucking love this movie. And I was talking to Lee offline on Instagram, and he kind of had the same experience as me, where he blind bought The Vinegar Syndrome, probably based on the cover too. And he was like, holy shit, this is actually good. And I was like, I know, like same exact experience. Like I expected nothing from this. If anything, I just wanted to see some TNA. The irony is you don't really see any TNA in this movie, but you get a great fucking movie instead. That's not what I wanted, but that's what I got.
Yeah. So this movie, was given to us by Cam Sully. He was the one that wanted us to break it down. So again, thank you, Cam, for picking this film, because it was a great film to break down and go over. We loved it. So
yeah.
Jacked Up Review Show podcast, check out his show.
Yep.
Cam knocked it out of the park, dude. So we hope we did it. We hope we did your movie justice with this breakdown and review. So wherever Mark Wahlberg is tonight, hope he's rolling over in his grave.
But I know you watched it some as a kid, here and there, bits and pieces of it, but as a whole, you enjoyed this one, right?
Oh yeah, I thought it was awesome. It's a dark movie. It's a dark subject matter. I mean, you think about it's very gross. She was raped by these guys, and it's very dark. So it's an exploitation film with a sci-fi twist. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude, I'm so happy. I was I wasn't quite sure if this was going to be up your alley or not, but I was kind of leaning towards, I feel like I know you well enough. I was kind of leaning towards yes, but you were kind of quiet, so I was a little bit wondering if you were going to dig on this one or not.
Oh yeah, no, it was well done with a case of Mark Wahlberg.
And yeah, like Zach said, thank you so much to Cam Sully for picking this. Also like Zach said, our Patreon, the highest tier, you pick the movies that we break down, and you can find all the links to everything on podcastafterdark.com. That's podcastafterdark.com. You can find links to all of our social media. You can find links to all the podcatchers we're on. Patreon. You can contact us. Our merch store, we have plenty of shirts and everything for you guys to wear, and it's TeePublic, so all the designs can be put on hoodies and whatever else that they have over there. So if you love the show, please go support us. We don't make much money off of it, off of each sale, but it's just kind of cool knowing that people are walking around wearing Podcast After Dark shirts. We've actually been getting quite a few sales lately, so I don't know who's buying them. But thank you for buying them.
Yeah, if you happen to buy one of our shirts, let us know. Drop us a line, because we
take
get
a picture.
We get a notification saying that a shirt's been sold, but we don't know who it's from. So let us know, and take a pic, and we'll post it on our Instagram.
Even. But thank you guys so much for supporting the show. We love the hell out of you guys. Zach, it is we're getting into 2025. It's January. What is, well, now I'm doing Seinfeld. What's the deal with January? What's going on $2 late fee on January?
Well, we've had a, shake up on our programming. As you well know, Dustin is taking a break from $2 late fee in season 6.
A sabbatical, if you will.
Yeah, and he will be back, but he's just taking some time off. And in the meantime, January's always been our in-between season month. So we put in some different programming. We put in a Tales from the Video Store this month with David Irons and Corey talking about Tony Todd.
And you guys heard that on our feed. And just so you all know, and I put links in there and everything, but that show normally lives on the $2 late fee Patreon page. So if you want to go back and listen to other Tales from the Video Stores or future ones, those normally live on the $2 late fee. That's patreon.com/$2 late fee. Again, that's patreon.com/$2 late fee.
Yeah, thank you. And we're doing like a little bit of a Patreon preview month on $2 late fee, because a new show just dropped on our Patreon on $2 late fee called Legends of the Territories, and that by the time of this airing, of this episode. That episode is out now. The premiere episode, which came out in December for Patreon listeners, we're dropping it this month on the free feed for everyone to get a taste of what Legends of the Territories is all about, with Paul London and myself. And of course, 80s Kids Unite. And then we're ending January with an interview with Kevin Von Erich on Legends of on Territory Marks. Kevin Von Erich, of course, the patriarch of the Von Erich family. I had the pleasure of meeting him in December at his ranch. And Paul and I interviewed him at the tail end of December, and we're going to be dropping that on at the end of January. It's a great interview. You know, people know the story of Kevin Von Erich, so none of it is tragic. All of it is positive, and he tells some wild stories. It's a fun conversation. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, you're going to enjoy it because it's like it's a time capsule of 80s pop culture.
Well, I mean, as someone who's not quite a wrestling fan, I still enjoy Territory Marks, and I feel like I learn something every single episode, that I listen to. So, definitely go check that out. And there might be a new show called Versus coming out soon.
Yeah, so Versus will be another live show. Instead of doing trivia on $2 late fee every month, we're going to be doing a show called Versus. And it's basically a gentle debate show between two things from the 80s. And
I won't
for example,
be gentle, buddy.
Transformers versus GoBots would be one example. Filmation Ghostbusters versus real Ghostbusters. So
you got to have me on for that one, buddy. But
what?
You got to have me on. You got to have me on, but put me on the Filmation Ghostbusters, and you have to be on the real Ghostbusters. You got to mix it up, dude.
Yeah, so the way this show is going to work, I'll go into more detail actually when the show airs, but the way the show will work will be, both sides will debate for a couple minutes, state their case, and then the listeners, the watchers on YouTube Live will decide who the winner is. And then at random, I will pick a Patreon to win a prize. So that's going to be coming up at the end of January. That's going to be my plan is for it to be the last Sunday of every month moving forward, which is the 26th, I believe.
Let me check my calendar because it's the first I hear of this.
Yeah, surprise.
Surprise, Corey,
but
this is when we're recording it.
Versus is coming soon, and that'll be live on $2 Late Fee's YouTube channel. And if you're not a subscriber yet to Patreon, if you're not a subscriber yet to Podcasting After Dark's YouTube channel or $2 Late Fee's YouTube channel, please go to our YouTube pages respectively and subscribe to those channels.
Yeah, that's right. And thank you all so much, and especially thank you to Cam Sully for just being a great friend and a great supporter of the show. And like Zach said, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of Steel and Lace. This was a movie that I would have brought to Pat at some point, to be honest with you. So I'm so glad that you brought it up. And Cam, you got great taste, buddy. It was a great movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as always,
we'll catch you on the dark side after we do about 500 push-ups.
What's the deal with the dark side?
Bow, 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 bow. Bow, 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 bow.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
I'm John, and I'm the host of Action Action. Every week, I'm joined by James.
Heyo.
And Dustin.
Hello.
And each week, we review, debate, and rank a different action movie.
We're creating the ultimate list of action movies.
From awful to awesome.
So if you want to hear 3 more white guys with beards talk about action movies.
And argue about where they belong on our list.
and decide you hate us because we made fun of your favorite movie.
Join us every Tuesday, and you can find us on your favorite podcatcher.
And Steven Seagal is a joke.